Luxury jumps on a Boeing jet, leaves behind a family, no regrets. He's got a birthday, I'm your old Shanghai. Eyes are on Mrs. Lai, the reason why. While in Brisbane, the tears roll strong. Chinese whispers called him to Hong Kong. Pack up your bags and off you go. Leave behind the begging for the Luxy show. Archie flies where the dragons soar to romance Mrs. Lai until his balls are sore. Archie's chasing dreams in the mystic land. Mrs. Lai brings coffee to his hand. Family's calls echo on the phone. He's miles away, lost but he's not alone. In old Shenzhen's glow, he likes to stray. With Mrs. Lai they bonk till the light of day. Pack up your bags and off you go. He's not showing up to New York, what show? Archie flies where the dragons soar to romance Mrs. Lai until his balls are sore. Though the tears roll down in Brisbane town, Archie's 3-inch dick flops all around. Celebrations in the neon night, forgetting home he's chasing new Asian delights. Pack up your bags and off you go. Leave the begging for the beach ball show. Archie flies where the dragons soar to romance Mrs. Lai until his balls are sore. Weeks later, Archie leaves his playground. Comes back home, he's Brisbane bound. Comes up with stories that he's going bust. Has to fool the punters to gain their trust. Pack up your bags and off you go. Leave the begging for the beach ball show. Archie flies where the dragons soar to romance Mrs. Lai until his balls are sore. Archie spent the punter's money, he's in a fix. Spins a story that he can't eat bricks. All the lonely simps believe his scam. Grab all their cash, shove it in his hand. Pack up your bags and off you go. He didn't bother with the New York watch show. Archie flies where the dragons soar to romance Mrs. Lai until his balls are sore. Comes on streams, he cries poor again. His mate Tan gives him $5 grand, maybe 10. Archie thinks he's a big swing dick, cause the punters fall for his gypsy shtick. Pack up your bags and off you go. Didn't bother with the New York watch show. Archie flies where the dragons soar to romance Mrs. Lai until his balls are sore.
All right, guys, welcome to the program. Welcome to the show, everybody. This is the Archie Luxury Channel and the Archie Luxury live stream. We are multicasting every day on 2 channels. So if you are sitting on the Archie Luxury Channel and you want to join over 100 people in the chat, we do have the Archie Luxury live stream channel, and that's where you're going to find the majority of the chat. If you don't see your wrench, you're likely on the wrong channel. You're probably on Archie Luxury. That's the channel where he does his videos, his famous YouTube videos on the Archie Luxury Channel. Now, the reason why we multicast on 2 streams is we do kind of have 2 different communities. There are those that simply just watch the videos that don't know about the live streams, and obviously there's the hardcore OG live streaming community. So Archie, for the past couple of months, has been running the main shows on both channels. Reason for that is obviously a broader audience. Archie has 70,000 organic subscribers on his main channel, so the more exposure he gets, he's been talking a lot about the live stream channel on his main videos. So that's why we're doing it on 2 streams. So if you are on the Archie Luxury Channel thinking, why is there only 20 people here? Well, that's the, a bit of a smaller group. If you want to join the big chat, you join the Archie Luxury live stream. Just a bit of housekeeping for everybody who are confused on the viewership. Why is it split? That is the reason why. All right, guys, let's say hello to everybody that have joined us in the chat. Almost 40 people. Thank you so much for tuning in. Acquired Taste chimed in quite early, actually, when I put the stream up. Exit versus Grail watches. He said Exit and Grail are an illusion, a mirage. The search is endless. We're going to go through that very, very shortly. A very interesting topic today, Exit versus Grail watches. And I have a couple other topics we're going to go through. Bit of housekeeping. Archie isn't going to be doing a show today. His flight had some issue. I think it got delayed, and it just got delayed for a really long time. So he sent me a message. Hey man, no main show. You know me, guys. I don't take no for an answer like that. I was like, fuck it, I'll just do the show. Don't mind doing 3 hours. Eddie is going to be on around 8 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Central. That is 5 p.m. on the West Coast. And if you're in the UK, it's about 1 in the morning on the Horology Dungeon. So I've already linked it. He's gonna come on the show after me. I'm gonna do about 3 hours. Obviously, everyone's welcome. If you want to talk watches, I'm gonna engage with the chat, obviously, as I do. Super chats are welcome. They keep the lights on here, guys, but not necessary. We got BC always telling us this pure shit on both channels. So you can see here BC doesn't have a wrench. He's probably on the Archie Luxury channel there, and they see BC has a wrench. That's on the live stream channel. So 2 channels that we're live streaming on today, guys. We got Mike the Mistake, who's pointing out that the Pantera didn't burn. He misspoke. My stories are true, Mike the Mistake. My stories are true. First super chat of the night. Thank you so much, GD, the hero from the hero, the peso cannon, as we call him here, hero of the Archieverse, a man who always hails Caesar. 100 Argentinian pesos. Thank you so much, GD. What is the meaning of life? Paddock and pussy fuckers. Now, GD, I'm not wearing a Paddock Philippe right now. I was wearing, it was Speedy Tuesday, so I wore my Speedmaster Moon watch all day. And then when I got home, I threw on the Explorer 40, a watch I like to live stream. It's super comfortable. No Paddock Philippe on the wrist today. We got Trusty telling us Rolex and Roxy's. All right, I got one. You see it in the chat. Throwing us the KFCs and the Only Tans. GD hailing Caesar. We got Jimmy La Narrativa, the fake Italiana, as Uzi would say in the rap. We got Sneck, make Narc's keys back again. I could do that actually quite easily, but look, the Narc likes to play hard to get. When Archie and him get into it, so it's very easy to understand. I'm the person who gives the Narc's keys is generally me, unless Nelson is paying for it, or other folks. Generally speaking, it's me who's sending Narc the keys. Last time I sent him the keys, Sneck was, he was helping He was helping Eddie on the dungeon, and he did point out, hey Tan, it'd be good if a few other people had keys so that we could keep the shows going if we wanted to. So I did throw, Narc the keys and Angelic keys. 2 guys have run the dungeon for a long time. I believe deserve the respect of having the keys, especially if they were both helping on the dungeon. Now, the Narc likes to fuck with Archie when he has the keys, backstaging Archie and whatnot. So the Narc, through his shenanigans, I think his keys, or his ability to keep keys, is pretty short-lived, Snack, because of Archie's impatience with him. Now, if you haven't seen Archie's video, he did a video today about the live stream business is going down. I don't know exactly what it was about, but he does talk about the Narc in that video. He also talks about HR. This is an interesting one. He's not only attacking the Narc, he's attacking HR. So HR, I know you're listening. If you hadn't seen that video, definitely check it out. I may play it a little later, but it's pretty interesting that Archie would bring up the live stream characters in some of his main videos. Corporate office, hello to you, sir or madam. We have Gigadwa, who says wrenches are for lonely simps. We got Uzi in the chat. My 41 gold millimeter sub with black dial and bezel is far superior to the blue one. Why do people lie to themselves and suggest otherwise? Yeah, I mean, blue's obviously a very popular color. It's, black dial is, people. There's so many black dials, Uzi, in the Rolex catalog that people want something different, and blue is different, and that's literally what it is. It's not really that much harder than that to understand. Blue is very nice, obviously, on the blue dial, and that combination of blue and gold, Uzi, has been classic for call it 4,000 some years, right? I always call it the Pharaoh's watch. Tutankhamun, his death mask was a combination of yellow, gold, and blue. So, that bluesy has some pretty ancient connotations. We got, I'm gonna start with Emre Ergun. I think it's a Turkish name, who's saying, first, nice to see you, sir. We got Rich Mitch in the chat. 2 British pounds. Now, if you haven't checked out Rich Mitch's channel, he runs a fragrance channel, does live streams pretty often, actually, Rich. It's not every day, but every couple of days, I think you do a live stream, maybe weekly. I don't know exactly the schedule, but really cool live stream. Gets a lot of viewers. Definitely check it out if you guys like fragrances. I go over there, talk some shit to my boy Rich. He's always supporting the Archieverse, especially when there's watch talk. And he says 2 British pounds, yes, and yes. Thank you so much, Rich. GD 100 Argentinian pesos. My sons are my brothers. Narky comeback. That was actually a good shtick. Saying his sons are his brothers. Now, GD, the one thing I don't know if Narc has gone down the road of is it seems like Mrs. Lai has a kid, and Archie is obviously trying to milk off of the older, wealthy woman. And I mean, I don't see Archie getting a penny if the girl's got a kid, right? So I don't know, man. I don't know Archie's strategy with all that. But GD, I think that's an avenue the narc needs to explore. Is all that. We got my boy Tom Hudson, the watch fanatic. What are your thoughts on the new Tag F1? Yeah, I'll pull this up here, Tom. Tag Formula 1 2025. Let's pull up the latest revival of the Formula 1. So, right, I'm just gonna share this. I gotta pull up the screen. I did have something else up on the screen, but I'm gonna pull this up for you, Tom. Look, Tag Heuer, not my brand. It's interesting, Tom. I like this for the nostalgia of it because I remember these watches, and I mean, at one point they were semi cool, I guess. I think from a nostalgia play, that's really where I like it, or I think it's cool. Others, I do know that a lot of folks really do enjoy this watch and have been, they have been talking about them over the last couple of days. But I think it's more of a nostalgia thing, a nostalgia factor to it that's really going to get folks interested. As you can see here, just kind of comparing and contrasting. It's really a nostalgia thing for me. It's aesthetic wise, I mean, not super contemporary, not the most attractive watch out there. Not going to get too deep into it, Tom, but yeah, look, okay watch. If you like the nostalgia, if you like something a little funky, it's a fun watch. I'll say it's a fun watch. I got nothing against the Tag Heuer brand. On this show, though, Tom, you'll probably get roasted for any Tag Heuer. I mean, fuck, even the Tourbillon, Tom. Bear Clooney bought the Tag Heuer Tourbillon, and I like that watch. I think it's a cool watch, but he got absolutely fucking roasted here. So Tag Heuer, nice piece, nostalgia piece, fun piece. Not something I'm going to buy. All right. Let me go back to. I had another thing showing here, another website showing as I was going through it, saying hello. We got Dirk Diggler. Yo, yo, yo. Nice to see you, Dirk. We got Joseph D. Joseph D says the Tag is on a bit of a win streak right now. Yeah, look, I know that's a popular watch. I know a lot of folks like it. It's just not my cup of tea. I like the nostalgia, but that's really the only thing it evokes emotion from me. Joseph D is just a bit of nostalgia. And it's not really the first piece I'm going to go to when I'm feeling nostalgic. Green Man in the chat. I want to see our boy back in the Brisbane studio. Yeah, he's on his way back to Australia. I'm just covering tonight for him, and obviously anybody wants to join me, talk some watches. I don't mind going solo. I don't really have an issue talking to you guys for 3 hours, but it is what it is. Tan, what are the indices and hands made of on the 6196? That would be gold, sir. That would be gold. I'll pull up. I'm already on the Patek website, so I'll pull you up these gold hands and indices. And then we have rose gold, and then you have anthracite, white gold applied, faceted obus style markers. So it is white gold, blackened white gold. You could say they call it anthracite white gold applied faceted, hour markers. It really gives a contrast to a dial, Mike the Mistake. I saw this in person. We describe it as salmon. My wife, who's not into watches, described it as peach. Peach dial, obviously, that kind of rosy color with a light metal is to me is kind of that fire combo. I don't like rose gold with salmon. I like a whiter metal with it. So I think it's a good combination. I have similar white gold indices on the 5212. And the whole point of it, Mike the Mistake, is contrast. I'm gonna go to the complication section here for you. Weekly calendar. You can see a black and white gold. Let's see how they describe it here on the dial. Blackened gold applied hour markers, right? So, one is anthracite, white gold applied hour markers. Maybe it's a combination. This one is called blackened gold. So, again, contrast is really key here. That's what they're looking for. It works super well on this watch. It, is dark, dark, dark. Can, almost look black. As you see it in person. Really, really cool. I don't know, Mike Mistake, if you've seen this watch. Pretty sure I brought this out the last time we met up. But correct me if I'm wrong. Busy on the shipyard. Cool, man. Always good to see you, Tom. Appreciate you being here. When Tan is here, have no fear. Thank you so much, Phoenician Cedar. I'm trying to keep the ship afloat while the old big boy sits in the middle seat flying back from Honkers. Mike the Mistake, $2 Canadian. Zeal, Watch Talk Appreciation. Thank you so much, Mike the Mistake. All right. Yeah, I was showing a different watch earlier. I just want to comment on that one watch I had up here, the 6159. Pretty interesting piece from Patek Philippe, released this year. at Watches and Wonders. It is a there was a classic or previous gen version of this one. I'll pull it up. Patek Philippe 5159. I'll pull up the G model, and you'll kind of get an understanding of what I mean, and how much different this watch is from its predecessor, or previous generation model here. So this is the predecessor. This is the 5159. You can kind of ignore like the Breguet numerals, Breguet hands type of a thing. If you kind of look at the layout here, retrograde. I believe this in certain cases, this one had Roman numerals as well. I'll pull up a collectability one here with Roman numerals to even show kind of how it's like aged, because the one at European Watch Co is more of a special piece. I think it's a London Saatchi edition. But you can see here 5159 previous generation, very, very traditional. What the fuck just happened here? Very, very traditional, guys. A bit old manish, not really a piece that I think people would gravitate to right now. But you look at this new iteration that Patek's come out with, the next generation 6159, really contemporary. I'm digging, I'm digging the dial. I'm digging the Clou de Paris hobnail bezel. It's just a lot more of a contemporary, younger vibe. Not using Roman numerals. You got loomed hands, loomed indices, perpetual calendar, retrograde. What's cool here, and the reason I brought this up, because it's very similar to my perpetual calendar, where it uses the big rotor movement, and that's not very common at Patek Philippe. It's not very common to get a seconds hand with their perpetual calendars, and it's not really common for them to use the big rotor movement. So pretty cool piece. I thought this was one of the, one of my favorites from the Patek Philippe lineup. Retrogrades are not super popular. I think Breguet does a great retrograde. I think Vacheron has some good retrogrades. I think Patek Philippe has knocked it out of the park here with this retrograde perpetual counter. I think this is a really, really cool piece. We got a super chat from Tony. Thanks so much, Tony. 2 British pounds. Is the 5212 a good buy at 30K? Yeah, absolutely. That's below retail, Tony. I think that's a great watch. Steel watch is still quite sought after. Now, I was in England not last year, but the year before, Tony. So a little bit closer to the boom, maybe kind of the tail end of it, you could say. And I remember going into an AD in Bath, and I walked in, and they knew I wasn't local, and I was very upfront with them. I said, "Look, I'm a Patek Philippe collector. I'm a watch collector. I'm from Canada. I'm really just here to have a look." And I sparked up a great conversation with the associate there. Obviously, very passionate about the brand and the watches. Anyways, I kind of asked about like what watches are, outside of the Nautilus and the Aquanaut, what are people asking for? And he said 2 watches at the time. One of them is the 5226. That's the what Archie calls the bitumen dial. It's that kind of that darker texture. Looks a little bit like asphalt dial with the syringe hands and Arabic numerals. Really cool piece in white gold. That was one of them. That was kind of the most asked for piece, I guess, outside of all the sports range stuff. And the number 2 was the 5212. So I thought maybe, because at the time, Tony, the 5212 traded over retail for a long period of time, and then it started coming down. When I bought mine, it was around that time where it was not exactly at retail, but it was on the path to retail. And so I wasn't sure. I was like, is this watch like is it just random hype from the secondary market, or is there actual interest at the consumer level? And he said to me, yeah, like, no, this is the 5212 and the 5226 are 2 of the most sought after watches that people ask about. So yeah, if you can get that under retail, definitely. I love it. It's a great watch. It's a great work watch, Tony. Super light on the wrist because it's obviously stainless steel. And yeah, just you don't have to worry about it being like gold where you nick something and then you're kind of fucked, right? Like, with steel, there's a bit more give, and you just treat it a bit differently. Really, really great piece. I think it's actually underrated, to be totally honest with you. I was really happy when I saw kind of the hype behind it because I thought it was a cool piece, but I think that hype was more centered around it being a steel piece. So yeah, I would say it's a home run. I would do it. I bought one myself. So yeah, man. Jay Gray says he's the cheapest of them all. Great watch, great work watch. You can do some scrap work in it. I don't know about scrap work, but I would definitely, I would definitely use it in an office job, no problem. I have gotten a post here from my good friend Bear Clooney Watches. And he is asking, the chat. This is awesome. I'm gonna share this, Bear. Hopefully you're listening. I'm gonna send you a text back actually in a second here. Just here, showing it on the show. So Bear Clooney Watches asks, let's see who gets this first. These three watches. What do these three watches have in common? This is this was gonna be my answer, Bear. All shitters. This was gonna be, man. Connor got to it before me. Three shitters. Someone says anti-magnetic. I'll ask you guys in the chat what you guys think are the commonalities between these watches. I don't know if Bear's trying to trick people with the Gerald Genta connection, because Gerald Genta did the Omega Constellation, obviously the IWC Ingenieur, not the Rolex Milgauss, as far as I know. The Rolex Milgauss's claim to fame is really that anti-magnetism, but that's a little, I don't know, it's a little too upfront. I think it's a little too obvious. So Bear Clooney, if you're listening in the chat, drop it in the chat. This is a good one. Whole Milk has, I think it's got a spot on all engineer watches. Absolutely. Right? Milgauss was an engineer's watch. Ingenieur means engineer. And, if you were working on the railways, you probably were an engineer. I'm gonna respond and say Whole Milk answered engineers. Let's see if Bear texts me back or if he hops on in the chat to let us know. But thank you so much. Really cool watches, Bear. I do dig them. Bear did get a new Ingenieur. I don't know if this is his exact watch. Maybe it is. Really cool piece. Love it with the blue dial. I think it's awesome. I actually told Bear, when you're looking to sell it to your boy, because I don't want to pay retail, and I know Bear got a really good deal on the watch. So yeah, man, I'm excited. Hopefully get this watch whenever Bear gets bored, and maybe I'll troll this watch for a while, just to make him feel like it's shit, and then he wants to flip it, and then I will reap the benefit here. Yes, those are my watches. Bear, is the three things in common? I think Whole Milk might have it. They're all engineers' watches. Let us know in the chat if that's the answer. Look, my answer was different. My answer was the same as Connor's here at the bottom that said all shitters. That was my answer. But yeah, I think Whole Milk may have it right, whether they're all engineer watches or watches targeted towards engineers. Let us know, Bear Clooney watches. All right, I'm going to get into my topic now. Spent about 20-30 minutes with you guys in the chat. And topic was of the day is exit versus Grail watches. So people talk about exit watches being kind of the last watch you're going to buy in your lifetime, and it's kind of done after that. And it could be a lot of different scenarios, right? Like it's the last watch you bought, and then you just croaked and died. That's the watch they're burying you in. Could be your exit watch, or really that purposely driven hunt for a piece that is just, you know what, I'm done after this. It could be that. It could be that. It could be simply that you're just done with the hobby. You hate watches. You hate my voice. You hate the voice of Archie Luxury, and you hate Higgy's voice. And we've annoyed you so much, and you're just out of watches, right? So it could be a lot of things, but the exit watch is definitely a real thing that people think. I think all watch collectors at some point think about the exit watch. And I was listening to another show. I was listening to Trap Vision show. Shout out to Trap Vision 3D. And he was talking about the exit watch, and him and his guests were saying, for us, there is no exit watch. Like we're gonna be buying watches forever, until we die. There's no idea or concept of exit watch. So we're gonna get into what my thoughts are about exit watches, Grail watches, and really the combination of the two. But we're gonna first off read out the super chat from Rich Mitch. Thank you so much. £2 I want the IWC in that blue, but in 35 millimeter. 35 mils, 36 mils. Hey man, no worries about that, Richmond. We do not shame the itty bitty risk committee over here. We got our boy Aussie Expat watches, a Platona exit watch. Aussie Expat, like the two terms, exit watch and Grail watch, right? Like I'm gonna start with exit watch. The final watch, the last watch you're gonna buy, and you just won't buy anything else after that. That's what I mean by exit watch. It's kind of that final piece. And when I think of exit watch, the kind of the next thought that went through my mind is Grail watch, because both are, both could be aspirational in that sense. Exit watch, I think, is more it's more just it could just be the last watch you get, and there was no aspiration towards it, or there could be a lot of aspiration towards acquiring that exit piece and it being your Grail. Platona could be, some folks' exit watch. I think it's a hard one, to be an exit watch, Oxy Expat, because, let's say that that's the last watch you buy. You don't buy anything else until you're, at all in the rest of your life. So you wake up, you're 75 years old, you probably flicked every other watch, and all you have is that Platona. And while it looks, what is left that you can see on it looks great, you can't really read that watch. And is it a good exit watch? I don't think anybody can really give a right or wrong answer here of what could be an exit watch. But I think everybody will have a good idea or some idea what their Grail watch is. And the real question is that are exit watches and Grail watches the same, or could they be different? Could your exit watch not be your Grail? That's a really I thought about it today. I thought that's a really fascinating concept, because I think that's the last watch you have, and it wasn't your Grail. And would you be satisfied? Would you not be satisfied? I don't know. It's a tough one, right? You could have acquired your Grail and then sold it, and then bought a Submariner as your exit watch, and would you be happy or would you not? And I think it's a tough question to answer, because I think everyone's going to give a bit of a different answer. Obviously, chime in the chat. Let me know what you guys think in the chat about exit watches. What do they mean to you? To me, an exit watch, I look at it in a different perspective. I look at it as my exit watch, the last watch I want to have or acquire would be my Grail watch. And ironically, I've actually broken that rule. As you guys all know, my 5320 perpetual calendar was my Grail watch, is my Grail watch. It's a watch I'll never sell. But I did buy watches after that. I did buy a Cermet, not too long. Only a few weeks ago, I bought a Cermet. So, yeah, I mean, I would hope that my exit watch would be my Grail watch, in that I would be satisfied to not really need to buy anything after that. But I don't think that that's necessarily the case. And I don't think that exit watches and Grail watches are necessarily the same thing. Others may disagree with me and say, hey, your exit watch has to be your Grail watch, because, I mean, why else would you, be in this hobby while not attaining your Grail? But when we talk about Grail watches themselves, they are like, there's this whole different viewpoints of Grail watches. Like, for a Grail watch, is it something you should acquire, or should it always be aspirational, like the Grail that we can't acquire? Should it be an aspirational piece, or should it be a piece that you should be able to attain in your lifetime? I don't know. Let me just catch up with the chat. Dirk Diggler telling me he hates OC's voice. All right. We got Jay Gray says Expat got some explaining to do. The Ghost of Geneva, Aussie Expat. I'll take some credit for spreading a few false rumors. So I was telling Archie was talking about you, I think, the other day, and I was like, did you see Aussie Expat at all? And Archie's like, no, he wasn't feeling well. And I'm like, well, didn't Aussie Expat get into the Booker event? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, well, how do you know he wasn't feeling well? Like, I mean, that's the excuse I would give you if I was trying to avoid you. And he kind of didn't put two and two together that he went to the Booker event and, just mistakenly never saw you guys at the Booker event. So I've kind of gaslighted a bit Aussie Expat, but that's where the drama's coming from. And we got Night Diver who says, I'm aspirational. I love collecting knowledge. So you're just like Mike the Snake, says Bear Clooney. Grail watches, I believe Grail watches should be attainable, or I don't think that there's a limitation in Grail watches that they have to be aspirational and they always have to be out of reach. I just don't see it that way. For me, a Grail watch is a watch that you aspire to. It's a watch that is very much out of reach, or challenging, or maybe it is achievable, right? It's something that I believe you have to aspire to, because honestly, all these Swiss brands, this is what they're selling you. Is they're selling you aspirational pieces. They're selling you dreams. They're selling you a lot of stuff. Now, we do have a very opinionated guy joining the panel here, hopefully to give me some challenges here. We got Roy joining us. How you doing, Roy?
Good. How are you doing?
I am talking exit watches and Grail watches, Roy. Grail watches to you. I want to hear from you. Should Grail watches be something attainable, or should they be always aspirational that you can never achieve?
I mean, I'm fine with either. I think you could obtain a Grail watch, and I think you could, have it just out of arm's length. It depends on your personality, I do have a little bit of a problem with the idea that, okay, we've already got to always have to have something out of arm's reach that we can never get to because you're on an endless treadmill of consumerism with this, which might be an odd comment to make, but I don't know if that's the most healthy thing in the world.
Mm-hmm. I think it's fair. I think it's a fair comment. It's just tough for me to. It's a tough pill to swallow, Roy. When you think about your Grail as something you'll just never attain in life. And look, I mean, I have a lot of pieces that I admire that I would love to own that are much better than my Grail piece. But if you ever look at any of the streams I did like 5 years ago, 6 years ago with Archie, I was always spruiking the perpetual calendar. What it was, the 3940. That to me was always, it was the quintessential Patek Philippe complication. They quote unquote invented it for the wristwatch. You could say they didn't invent the perpetual calendar, but first to do it in a wristwatch. Has a lot of history with the brand. So for me, being obviously a huge fan of the brand, it just clicked that way. Honestly, Roy, at the time, probably when I was streaming back then, I wasn't 100% sure if I was ever going to be able to attain one because they are very expensive. And if you're going to get a
Here's
resale,
the thing. Just what you said there. You didn't think you could attain it at the time, but like there's this great secret that I think gets buried in like the idea that West and capitalism is evil. In that, most people start out and then they slowly move up the socioeconomic ladder. And you know what? If you get that Grail watch because you had success that you didn't ever anticipate, and you're happy with that, there's no reason why you need to find another Grail watch at an arbitrarily higher price.
not at all. Let me ask you a question. So, a question that I think a lot of collectors have thought about, because when I meet the average collector in the Archieverse, it's definitely a wide spectrum. We have those that have one nice watch like an Omega or a Rolex. I'd say that a lot of folks are kind of the bell curve is folks that have collections that are worth maybe between 30 grand to 200 grand, call it maybe at the top end. And then you got the super collectors, right? The guys who have collections that are, surpass 200 grand in value. I think every single one of them at some point has thought, if I nuked my whole collection and I amassed 30 grand or 100 grand or 200 grand, whatever it may be, I could buy my Grail watch. What do you think holds a lot of people back from doing that?
Because I think a lot of times a Grail watch is something that you might really appreciate from an intellectual standpoint, an artistic standpoint, but it might not work in all or even most situations. And so unless you have a Grail watch that is versatile enough that you can enjoy it on a regular basis, reliability is a factor there. A lot of these super complicated watches, you got to be careful with. Don't roll that shopping cart over the rubble strip at the exit of the grocery store while grabbing it with your watch hand. So I think there's just a bit of a utility aspect to that. And then also people that get big collections, even though they fantasize perhaps about going down to one amazing piece, well, it's like, they like this particular watch with when they put a suit on. They like this particular watch when they're going out for a casual dinner, etc.
All right, I'm going to respond to that in a second. I just want to give a shout out to Ryan Hoffrey. Thank you so much. $2 super chat. Real Watch Talk. Thank you, Tan. Yeah, man, I appreciate the support, Ryan Hoffrey. I think it was an interesting comment you just made, Roy. You immediately leaped to complications as what would be potentially the Grail watch. But Aussie Expat, earlier, talked about Exit Watch being the Platona, and that may, that may contradict your premise because that is a watch that you could take to the grocery store, not have too many problems with, and it still be somewhat reliable. And it's an expensive piece. People would consolidate just to buy that.
Correct. And I agree. There are exceptions. So like if I were to consolidate my collection and buy one watch and walk away, it would be the overseas tourbillon. In that one, I mean, it's not the most delicate thing in the world. It's certainly not the most robust, but you can use it in just about any situation.
Okay, so Night Diver's saying, I like the topic of being a one and done guy. So this is an interesting one. We're talking about Grail watches, just kind of that, or even exit watches, right? Being your last watch. I think that there's overlap between the two. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think you can have an exit watch that's different than your Grail watch. Absolutely. but the one and done. Okay, so here's the thing. I think a lot of folks, when they talk about this Grail piece, and even kind of the comment you made, Roy, was, well, you can't use that grand complication every day. And then the question is that, do you really have to? Because it could be your only watch. It could be the absolute watch you love the most, but you don't have to wear it every day. Like the famous saying in the Archieverse is, your phone's your watch. Purely from a
Right.
tool perspective, I use my watch as a tool. I look at the time, and I think it's faster than taking my phone out of my pocket. But I mean, it doesn't have to be that. So when you're thinking of one and done, Archie's always talking about, well, it has to be versatile, has to be this, has to be. It's like, no, man, you're not fucking going in the pool when you're 85, bro. Like, don't tell me you're not going in the pool right now, let alone when you're 85. So you're not going to be using that all the
Swim up
time.
far. What are you talking about?
He just won't, like Roy. He won't take his Breguet, which is water resistant,
Yeah.
into the pool. And I'm just like, well,
Yeah,
how the fuck are you telling me that like you have to have a gold sub or a
Right.
bluesy as your exit or Grail piece, or not say Grail, but exit piece, because it's water resistant? Who gives a fuck? Like, the point is, being a one and done guy at Night Diver to me means you don't have to let the watch own you. You own the watch, and therefore,
Right. But I
you
mean,
wear it whatever you want.
it just comes down to like, yeah, that lifestyle thing. It's like, could he do it with a complication based on his lifestyle? Could I do it with a grand comp based on mine? There's absolutely no way. So, that's an individual assessment, obviously.
Corporate office says, have the blue dial Vacheron. Besides the blue rubber, I have the black rubber, a VC's version of the Batman. Really cool piece, corporate office. A lot of folks here in the Archieverse are big fans of the Vacheron Overseas blue dial. Sneck says, Grail watch is when you have a watch to aspire to. Exit watch is when you're done aspiring and just got a reverse mortgage. That's a good point, though, right? Like, so the topic, Roy, is exit versus Grail. Obviously, is it the same thing? So I'll get you to chime in on what you think it's the same thing, but also
No, that's totally different.
Yeah, I think it can be totally different. I don't think it has to be totally different.
Yeah, no, it's a Venn diagram, and they could end up being the same watch. It could be like you never expected you would be in a position to buy your grand comp. You got your grand comp, and you're like, I'm good. And that's it.
Right, but it's not my exit watch, right? Because I just said I bought a Cermet. Like,
No. I'm not saying it's your exit watch. I'm just saying, like, a hypothetical individual that had your story leading up to it might have taken a different path after getting it.
Yeah, maybe, right? And when I think of exit watch, we talked about Grail. Let's go to exit, Roy. Let me ask you, what would be an exit watch for you? That could be an exit watch.
But like I said, it would be the Overseas Tourbillon, because it's, I could use it, virtually anywhere. And yeah, like I said, it's a little bit delicate because it is a tourbillon, but it's not overwhelmingly delicate.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be it. If I was going to do so I guess, well, the other thing is, I'm lumping exit watch into that would be my one and done. So if I'm still collecting watches, I don't know if I would, like, if I'm not going to pare down the collection to one, I don't know if I could ever say it was an exit watch for me, just the way I work.
I think it's more of a mentality thing, right? Like, as in, you are just making that conscious decision that this is the last one I'm going to buy. This is the one I'm going to keep for the rest of my life. And that's it. I'm not buying anymore. I have no interest to buy anymore. I'm done. And that doesn't mean that you offload your entire collection. Maybe financially, you could buy that watch on its own. And you could obviously, give your collection to, your family or to whoever you want to. And you could still wear that piece as your exit piece. So it's an interesting take that you're picking a Vacheron Tourbillon overseas. I'm gonna try to pull that up here, Roy, because give people the visuals here.
Well, and the other thing is, you might not even going into the purchase, like whether I bought that or whether I buy the Ploprof, the new one. Like, maybe that ends up being my exit watch after the Ploprof, because at that point I'm like, I don't feel like adding anything to this collection anymore, and I never do. But it was never intended to be that. It was just like, okay, I've got that, I've got these other things, I don't need anything more.
Did you want a different color metal? I don't know if there's a different. I only found was this one.
Yeah, no, that would be it.
Okay, I think there's a rose gold version as well, but yeah. I mean, this is it's an interesting one for someone to pick as an exit watch. I think that the more common answer I would have probably got, and obviously not from you, but maybe from other people, Submariner. I think Submariner would be the key one. It's just I think a lot of folks can admit that the Submariner is a pretty good watch for most people. It's universally loved. I would say it's very ubiquitous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like seeing stuff like this. That it's a bit off the beaten path. It's a very high end piece. Um, but it's still a sports watch. It's still got some functionality over a watch on a leather strap, for example. So it's a cool choice. It's a cool pick, man. I was a little surprised when you said that.
Yeah.
Um, one and done, right? Like kind of the same because now you are going into territory of one and done. For your lifestyle, right? You're very active. We can see obviously you've shared some of that part of your life on the show. Um,
Yeah.
Again, are you making the conscious choice of wearing this watch all the time, or when this watch becomes your one and done, are you going to, use it a little less sparingly?
The only reason why I wouldn't take it someplace is if I knew I was going to a location where I did not want to wear something that would attract attention, whether that's a watch or any kind of jewelry whatsoever. I don't abuse my watches. Like if I'm going mountain biking, if I'm going skiing, if I'm going dirt biking, I'm not wearing the watch. So, you know,
All right, we got a super
but as far as travel and everything else, it's going with me. If I leave the house, it's on my wrist.
Yeah, and I think as it should be, right? I'm a big proponent of you know, and Jamie Opulence says this is the own the watch, don't let the watch own you. Rich Mitch, £2 British. Thanks so much, Rich Mitch. He's asking us. Roy, I'll give you the shot first before I answer. What should I upgrade the Explorer 40 with? So in his collection, Rich Mitch has a Datejust 36 blue stick dial. I believe he just got on a Jubilee. I believe Rich Mitch, if I'm not mistaken. He's got the Explorer 40, and he's got a vintage Cartier Santos two-tone. What do you think you should upgrade that Explorer 40 with?
I mean, at the point, I'd be, because I don't know what a budget is or anything like that. So, like, how do we even know? Are we only looking at Rolex? Are we considering other brands? Like,
let's say if you're looking at the
sporty watches.
Let's say you're looking at the collection. Let's say there's, he'll obviously chime in on the money, but
Yeah.
let's say you're looking at that collection. What comes to your mind of how you would balance it out a little differently?
I mean, I would be tempted to say something like, why not get a B09? Why not get something that's, it's sporty, but it's a little bit, more on the dressy side of sporty. It's a robust, reliable watch. I mean, unless I miss something there, he doesn't have a chronograph. It's manual wind versus automatic, but you don't have to worry about setting a date.
Let me pull up a photo here, just so that he can get an idea of what you're talking about. I'm always searching for some decent photos, but I end up just going to the website. So this is fuck off all this shit.
They have a white dial and a black dial, I believe, now in steel, so you're not committed to green.
Yeah, you don't have to be committed to the pistachio. I think it's called the pistachio on that one.
Yeah, they call it pistachio.
Yep.
It's like a pastel green in person.
Yeah, I mean, chronograph's a good one. So he's saying around 10 to 15K. Let's say that's US, 10 to 15 grand. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can get in that 10 to 15 grand. Chronograph's a good one. Rich Mitch may hate, for example, the Moon Watch. A lot of people just don't like the Moon Watch. To me, that's the chronograph I would say that most folks should get. If you like chronographs, I think there's no reason not to have one of those in the collection, much less than 10 grand at that side. Rich Mitch, I still kind of look at your collection and I still feel, from my perspective, a classy watch on a leather strap, I think is what's missing. I'm not a big chronograph guy, so I don't really like to balance complications like that because not everybody's a chronograph guy and you don't necessarily need a chronograph. You could go with a nice dress piece. I've obviously spoke. I'm going to pull up the one I've told you to buy a number of times. I'm going to show you the dial. I think I've showed this before to you, but I'm going to show you again. Is this it's the boutique edition? I'm looking for the Guilloche edition. Here we go. Vacheron Traditionnel Guilloche dial. This is in, I think, 38 mils. I've seen these go for, not necessarily the Guilloche dial, but the standard dial. A very similar aesthetic to this one. Go for as low as 12 US on Moda. So, yeah, like this is a pretty underrated piece. I mean, you're getting high horology. Getting Geneva Seal movement, Geneva Seal case. Really beautiful watch. A watch that I think is arguably more beautiful than the 5196 Patek Philippe. It was always a bit of a battle between these two. Simple dress watch. Very honest. High horology, and it would fit in the collection, right? You have your date just, which could be your daily wear. Slash even a lot of people don't consider date just sport watches. I think it can be used. It's one of the most versatile watches out there. So you got a really all rounder. You got a dress watch here, and I consider your Santos kind of the vintage piece. It's something that you can wear as a dress watch, but I don't think would be as comfortable as this would be in formal wear. That's one of them. Another option I would say, Roy, if we were to go complication wise, I mean a GMT, right? You don't have a GMT in the collection. Batgirl, Pepsi is a little bit out of the range, but you're in that kind of Batman territory. Batman would be a cool one because you'd already have your date just on Jubilee. You could upgrade to a Batman, have a nice GMT, nice pop between that blue and the black, and then have the Santos again, either for a dress watch or as your vintage piece.
And if you wanted to stay sporty and that you wanted to do like a non-obvious, travel watch to most people, you could do the Omega Aquaterra World Time.
Yeah, that's a good piece. I think Red Shovel actually bought that watch. I think I saw it, in the UK when I met him. Yeah, it's a cool. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot, Rich Mitch, I think, out there. Like Roy said, it would be important to get information. I know that you're not a fan of big watches, so that Vacheron being 38 is a really good size. It's not too small. It's not too big. It's kind of right in that sweet spot. I think it's a great, it's a great piece. It's a great brand. It's an honest watch. You're not really going to get more bang per buck, in my opinion, at that price point. And then look, not everybody likes dress watches, and I'm gonna pivot after we talk about this Exit Grail watch stuff into a few different topics that are centered around how collectors, we bucket certain things, we bucket certain terminology. We like to, there's a wide spectrum when it comes to watches, and we try to make sense of it all by creating a lot of terminology that really, oftentimes I think really divides the community. But I think we're good on the Exit and Grail watch stuff. I'm going to pivot right now with you, Roy, on the topic of micro brands versus independence. Okay. The reason I didn't title this stream Micro Brands versus Independence is I know most of the people that watch this, the 60 people that are watching right now, are mainly into luxury watches. But I was talking again, to Trap Vision and Skylar Santana, a couple of guys that are big in the micro brand YouTube space, and just talking to them about, they're very passionate about micro brands. And then I asked them, I said, well, what is a micro brand? How do you define a micro brand? Is Laurent Ferrier a micro brand? Is it defined by how much they produce? Like what is it? So Roy, let me ask you, what would you consider would be the biggest difference between or that separates a micro brand from what we call an independent?
So for me, it's the category of, is it a luxury piece or is it not? Because if you're just going purely off of numbers, there are makes, like you just said, Laurent Ferrier, that would be considered a micro brand if they were producing pieces that sold at, say, $1,000 to $2,000. I think that the second that you're talking about pieces that go into the upper single digit thousands to tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, then you're talking about an independent. I mean, as far as I can tell, that's the distinction.
All right, we got a super chat coming here for us. Let me just try to get this up on the screen here for everybody.
Because we certainly wouldn't call a Dufour a micro brand, right?
Well, that's the thing. I had a very cool conversation with a collector earlier today. Why is this not showing? Share this tab instead. I believe Darth Neg is just talking about the World Time. What do you guys think of the Reverso Geographic? I believe he's speaking of the new World Time that came out. I love it. Roy, what do you think about this piece?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Reversos. I think it's awesome.
What I like about this, Darth, is a lot of these cities, I always look at the city ring when I look at a World Time, because there's some cities that are just kind of like, they're pretty vanilla, like London, Paris, pretty vanilla. You'll see New York. If I can find New York over here. New York. So some of these cities are interesting. What I like about this is they did go off the beaten path. You've got St. Bart, as a city, pretty cool to see that. I never really see that on a lot of World Times. Some World Times I see that on. A lot of people hate El Angeles. I think Kelsowitz and OC, the guys from Los Angeles, really hate
Yeah,
El
no
Angeles.
American in the U.S. from anywhere ever calls it El Angeles. Like, I have no idea where the rest of the world came up with this.
Right. It's just it's just weird. Auckland is pretty normal to me. It's pretty normal. Sydney normal. Tokyo normal. Beijing normal. Bangkok, Dhaka, Karachi pretty normal. Dubai, Moscow. Athens is not. This is an interesting one. Athens. What do you think of the Athens? Our Greek fans, I'm sure, will appreciate Athens on the dial.
I've always wondered about this. So Tech will do like the different areas of the globe on the cloisonne, and then sometimes change up the cities and stuff a little bit, especially if watches are going to be a limited release in targeting a specific region. But if you're a more mass market brand, as much as you could consider JLC that, and you could actually, make it worth your while based on your pricing structure and everything to change those cities every once in a while. I think that would be a neat thing for collectors. I don't understand why, they wouldn't do it, or like Vacheron wouldn't do it. Yeah.
No, I agree. I'm actually going to show you what I like about World Times is I always look at them as time capsules, Roy, because in 100 years, there may be completely different cities on these World Times, right? Like, time zones are not necessarily always static. There are cities that change time zones. I wouldn't say all the time, but it does happen. And so we may see it's kind of the sphere of influence of certain countries in the world. So I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm going to pull up a Patek Philippe 2523, arguably one of the most famous.
Still has the old British protector, British colonial time zone stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the first points to point out is Bombay, Calcutta, right? Calcutta was the capital of the British Raj. And this watch was made, I believe, pre-partition of India. So you have two time zones. India only has one time zone, and it's not part of the 24 principal time zones. It's a half-hour time zone. That's why when you see here on the world time for JLC, you see you don't see an Indian city. You see Karachi, which is in Pakistan, and you see Dhaka, which is in Bangladesh, which are, and India's in the middle of them, right? Because India has a half-hour time zone and only has one time zone now, whereas back in the day, you had two times in India. So there's that part of it. But also, what I find super interesting, if you look at the sphere of influence, it kind of sucks because it's a bit, it's upside down. But in the Eastern time zone back then, you had both New York as well as Montreal. So Canada, had a city on the dot. Right now, they don't have any. You have a Mexican city from Mexico City. You have, you have three other, American cities, maybe more if there's, a Hawaiian city, I guess. But it's interesting. Here you see on the dial, you see California. It's like not El Angeles. You got entire California on the dial, right? Yeah. You have Denver and Mexico for the central. What was probably the mountain time zone, I guess. Mexico City is no longer in mountain time zone. Mexico City is central time zone, which used to be Chicago, on this dial, right? So Chicago is now gone, and it's Mexico City. Arguably, Mexico City is like one of the largest cities in North America. So, I don't doubt that they should be there. But I mean, you do have a whole bunch of different. You have a whole bunch of different, cities or parts on the dial. You got Iceland on the dial here. You've got, in this time zone, you got three cities. You got Oslo, Geneva, and Rome. Then you got Moscow, Istanbul, Cape Town. You don't have a South African city on the dial anymore. Just super cool to see, man. You see Adelaide and Tokyo in the same time zone. So it's a time capsule to me. And that's what I find fascinating about World Times is you really can just look back into time and see how the sphere of influence of the world, the geopolitical atmosphere or playing field has changed. And it's just, I always found it fascinating. I always found it pretty cool. Back to...
That actually brings up what I love India, like on the geopolitical stage, they always go their own way, including with time zones.
Well, look, I mean, it's again, this wasn't probably India that was making these decisions back then. It was it was
No, I'm talking
England.
about now specifically the current Indian nation. They go their own way on a lot of things. They're interesting. I like them.
Yeah, 100%, man. They're definitely I mean, they're definitely on their own path. I would say is the right way to go. So independence and micro brands. So you talked about kind of the target market being luxury. I was going to bring up. I had it up on the screen before I got the super chat. See if I still have it. Konstantin Shaikin. Okay, so would you consider
I
Konstantin
gotta
Shaikin?
give me 1 minute here, and I'll be right back. Okay.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. So maybe I'll get into my narrative, guys, and we'll let Roy combat me on my narrative. India is controlled by Raj Mike the Snake. Um, Konstantin Shaikin's an interesting one because a lot of folks when they talk about micro brands, and I was talking to Collector earlier today about what their thoughts were about this topic, and their response was, what separates micro brands and independents, as we call them, is craftsmanship, and I disputed that. I disputed, that completely. I said, okay, sure, like Recepi and Philippe Dufour. I mean, they have a certain shtick when it comes to how they do their watchmaking, and it's primarily focused on hand finishing, hand finishing movement. And it's like when you think of certain micro brands and you say, well, they don't have any craftsmanship. I mean, it's tough to say when you think of a brand like Shaikin, who arguably uses pretty generic movements like most micro brands out there do, right? Many micro brands use Salida movements, NH35 movements, Miyota movements. I mean, Konstantin Shaikin uses Zeta movements for his pieces. I asked this collector that focused on craftsmanship. I asked him, is Konstantin Shaikin a micro brand or is it a independent? He said independent. And I'm like, well, what's the rhyme and reason here? Because 1 minute you're telling me, well, all these other brands, these micro brands are generic. They just, it's all about slapping in generic movements and yeah, maybe they spice up a dial or spice up a case and that's it, and they just pump it out. But then I'm like, what about Shaikin? I mean, that's literally what Konstantin Shaikin does, and Konstantin Shaikin has won the GPA. I'm not downplaying Konstantin Shaikin's work. I love his watches. I think he does a lot more. He obviously modifies them and adds to them. But so do other micro brands, and they're not called independent. So this topic came about because I was watching Trap Vision 3D, and he was talking about micro brands, and he always talks about micro brands. And I said, well, Trap, do you consider Recepi a micro brand? I mean, Recepi only produces, how many watches? 50 watches, 10 watches? I don't fucking know. It's definitely not 70,000 like Patek Philippe. And it's definitely probably similar to what probably less than what some quote unquote micro brands produce. So is it about production? Is it about target market? Are you an independent because you target the luxury buyer? That's why you're an independent, and a micro brand targets a non-luxury buyer. Like, how do we separate? This is why I was saying to you guys earlier about the collecting spectrum, is very broad. You can have people selling shitters all the way up into, the Dufours of the world, right? And as watch enthusiasts and as watch collectors, we try to, try to bring a bit of rhyme and reason to the chaos, right? To make it a little bit easier for us to understand. I always was confused with the separation between micro brand and independent because I argued with this collector and I said, well, look, you're telling me they're completely different. And I'm going to tell you that they have a lot more similarities than you may think. But before I do that, I'm going to grab the super chat, a very generous super chat from JDMTL, 14 Canadian dollars. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate that. Love the watch talk with sexy Roy Tan. I love red meat drama. How much jizz could Curly take with OC? Your thoughts, buddy. Look, for that, for 14 bucks, I'm going to play the track. I'm going to, Roy just came back. I'm going to try to find you this Uzi track about Curly and OC. It's actually pretty funny play on Curly's air fryer chicken and cheese video. Give me a second here, Roy. I just got to pull it up. I found it.
Yep.
I just need to make sure I got the audio going for you guys because sometimes if you don't do the audio properly, it's gonna. All right, here we go. Let's share this tab and let's go.
I'm not hearing any audio if they're supposed to be.
No audio? All right, hold on.
Uh,
Yeah, it sometimes does this when I'm sharing the screen and it just bugs out here. So I got to share it again. Let me get this up and let's go back and I'll just start again. Why not? Let's go.
I told you don't fuck with me. Jack, I'm about to record, take the boomer off the mic and put the Uzi on record, man. So let me slow it down so you can turn it up. You know, uneducated white trash, Cressy the clown. Fuck Carly, bends at the knees. To his handler, OC. Where did Mookie go? Nobody knows, but that's how it goes when OC shows. Curly and OC are just like carrots and peas. And if you stick with the beat, then I can make your head bop just like you do with OC. Oh, I don't talk ice cream. My mirror glasses are clean. My big fat wide gap tooth's no issue for sea urchins when I eat. Gondola, Culago, Calimata. You make no sense, you speak fake Italiana. Gelusolo, Curly and OC are just like carrots and peas. And if you stick with the beat, then I can make your head bop just like you do with OC. Oh!
All right, Roy. That's a bit of the fun here.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you were going through an area or a patch that you couldn't hear what I was saying. I spoke to a collector earlier, and it was the same topic: microbrand versus independent, and they said that the separating factor is craftsmanship. And I immediately challenged them, and I said, "Well, what about Konstantin Chaikin at that point? What do you consider them?" And their response was independent. And their whole premise about craftsmanship was, well, all these micro brands use generic movements. They kind of just modify a bit of it, modify the dial, and then they spruik it out, and that's what it is.
I would argue they're being pedantic at that point because when you're talking about upping the craftsmanship, what happens to the number?
Well, of course, and that's the question, right? Is it about price? Is that all it is?
Well, I mean, if you're selling 100 watches and they are using generic ETA movements and cases and dials out of China, and you're charging 20 grand, you're selling no watches. So, like I said, I think it's a meaningless distinction that somebody's just drawing to be argumentative at that point.
Yeah, but I mean, let's not kid ourselves, right? It's not like a Patek Philippe costs them 70 grand to make and they sell for 75, right? Like, that watch does not cost them, but it's the same argument. Whatever these guys are doing from a margin perspective is exactly what the big brands are doing. Why are they demonized for that, you think?
I think they're demonized simply because people don't like the aesthetics. I think that they're just reaching out for ways to complain, in all honesty.
I'm going to, so when I told this collector, I said, there's a lot more similarities between micro brands and independents than you think. Number one, they're all small businesses. Like let's call a spade here. They're all small businesses. Whether you're a small manufacturer like Anderson Genève, or you're a small micro brand called Laurier. I'm going to show you guys a Laurier in a second here. I know that you guys don't like shitters here, but I gotta be a little fair and balanced here. I'm going to pull up a Laurier piece, Laurier watches. Let's go to their Neptune piece here. Share this tab. This is their Neptune. Obviously, it's got inspiration from a lot of different pieces, and even on their website, they showcase where the inspiration is from. If you go all the way to the bottom, it says the inspiration, obviously Bond, and it shows 3 watches that this watch got inspiration from the Submariner on the right, Blancpain Bathyscaphe, and the Omega Seamaster. So, they're not hiding the fact that this is an homage piece and it's an inspirational. It's a piece that they got inspired from. It is not exactly the same design, and people look at that and say, well, micro brands, shit, generic movements, et cetera, et cetera. I think this uses a Miyota movement or something like that. But no different. Let's just talk about the similarities first. Micro brands and these other independents are all small businesses. Number one. Number two, we talked about production of these watches, right? Like these micro brands are not pumping out hundreds of thousands of pieces. Maybe a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 if they're lucky.
Yeah.
Similar to a lot of smaller independents. Their buyers, are also a very interesting, an interesting similarity in their buyers. Maybe not from the buyer persona, you could say, Roy, in that, like, I
Yeah.
highly doubt Roy is looking for a Laurier, but somebody who's got the same enthusiasm for watches as you do, will buy these watches as well. They're buying. You're not buying these. These. I mean, we call them here shitters. You're not buying these shitters because it's it's just the cheapest one out there and you just need a tool. No, you're buying them because you like watches. You could probably only afford these and therefore you buy them, but you're still very enthusiastic. Similar with the independent guys. Why are people buying Reshepis and Carly Voutilainens over Patek Philippe's? Well, it's because they're enthusiastic about watches and they're seeking something different. That's a big similarity between buyers of micro brands and buyers of independents.
Well, and there's also the Babe distinctions, which is the buyers of independents are, if they're actually drawing that distinction and then arguing about it, they're incredibly pretentious and arrogant. Because that's the main thing. If you're going, like somebody like Jorn is not a micro brand, they're an independent. It's like, okay, well, let's start. If I want to be pedantic, I'm going to start looking at definitions of words, and then we're going to have to start drawing a hard line. Okay, what is the exact number of watches somebody can make to be considered a micro brand? And if we're talking about independent, is Rolex an independent? Because they're not part of a group. Neither is Patek. Neither is AP. What's the exact upper limit of watches that a quote independent can make before they become something else arbitrarily that's not actually defined?
Yeah, and that's a great point. So kind of 2 points. Let me get to Thomas's one, and then let me get to that one here that you said, Roy, because it's really good. Thomas says, if you consider Scheichen the Thin King, this is the newest, thinnest watch in the world. Constantine made the movement completely by himself, so he's definitely not a micro brand, but a fully fledged independent watchmaker. I brought that up actually with the collector when we were talking about Constantine Scheichen, because I knew that they were going down that micro brand path with him using the ETA movements, and I did point out to them the Thin King at the time, because I do believe that. He's a small business. I mean, if he was there at AHCI in Geneva, he was the only one, didn't have anybody else working with him as far as I could see. And he was answering all our questions. So definitely a small business owner, similar to a lot of these micro brands that are out there. And Roy mentioned, well, do you consider Rolex or even Patek Philippe as independents? Because they are independently owned, by either, they're privately owned by a trust or they're privately owned by a family. They are independently owned. They're not owned by a conglomerate like Richemont or Swatch Group. This is what I'm saying, Roy, is all this terminology between microbrand and independent, it really gets muddied and blurred because when you think of the terminology of independent, yeah, you could even say, well, yeah, those are independents as well. But I think that in this context, when you really think of what we define as independent brands, Carry Voutilainen, Reshepis, Constantine Scheichen, there's tons of them out there you could name. You see them as not big corporations. You see them as smaller businesses, you could say. And that's where Patek Philippe, Rolex, Breitling, I mean, these could be completely different ball games because they are bigger corporations. So let's take the small business as kind of where it starts, right?
And then you're talking about, okay, so let's not go into the upper tens of thousands in production. Where does somebody like Jorn fit in that equation, or Moser? Are they an independent, or do they produce too many watches?
I think Jorn and Moser would classify in the independents. Whenever everybody, someone asks me, well, what's an independent that you would buy? I would say honestly, it'd probably be Moser, because I think that they have the longer or the better likelihood of surviving over time. I think the independence craze. I'm going to get into a little bit of a deeper topic on the independence here once we kind of get off the whole micro brand.
Well, and here's the next question though: does Jordan or Moser keep the independent thing associated with them? What happens if Jordan's producing 20,000 watches in 10 years from now? What do we do then?
I think it's also the investment from Chanel and everything else. Like that's where Jordan is moving away from that and becoming kind of conglomerate.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I didn't even consider. But let's just say a hypothetical situation where that didn't happen and their production was 20,000 watches in the year 2035. Are they still an independent, or are we just calling them that as a legacy carryover? Like all this stuff is so ill defined.
I think it's I mean, you're in the U.S. I mean, Uzi's in the U.S. You guys know the battle between Wall Street and Main Street, right? I think that's the separation between the two.
Okay.
Is when you become more towards the Wall Street side, I would not consider you an independent in that sense of the word anymore. When you're more on the Main Street side, you small production, you know your clients, you're really you're not going for scale, economies of scale. You're not going through the normal business practices that many of us know about out there. Yeah, it is, it's whether you see it as, I know whole milk's working in all kinds of, different nuances of it, because he's talking about the Urban Jurgensen connection with Kari Voutilainen, and he's talking about Precision AG section of Moser. We're simplifying it a bit here, whole milk. We're not going to go too deep into that. But I mean, whole milk, we can use multiple examples of other brands that aren't in the same boat as these guys. Now,
is Arnold and Son? They're owned by one of the conglomerates, aren't they?
I don't know Arnold and Son. Let me look this up here. Arnold and Son,
Yeah, because that'd be a weird one where if like they're owned by a conglomerate, but look at what they do.
It's owned by Citizen. Yeah, that's who it was. Yeah, it is Citizen. So Gil O'Shea says microbrand says indie. I can't explain them, but I know them when I see them. Independent brands, it's an interesting thing because it's really kind of a product of the modern day. And I asked this question to the same collector. I said, would people want these watches if they weren't selling for astronomical prices above retail? I truly believe that there's just hype behind these watches. I basically, the question I asked them was, if a Recipe sold for 10 grand, do you think a lot of people, like on the secondary market, do you think a lot of people would be gravitating to it? Or do you think a lot of people would still gravitate to it because of the finishing? What do you think? If a Recipe that retails, let's say, I'm just going to use simple terms, 100 grand US, which sells for 10 times that money sometimes, right now at auction. Let's say that 100 grand disappears and evaporates to being 10 grand on the secondary. Do you think that people would be seeking out Recipes?
It depends on the production. I mean, as long as they have a reasonable ability to maintain their price, I think that people will remain interested in the brand. But I mean, look at what happened with the Ross from the 90s, where those dropped to almost nothing, and now all of a sudden people are going after those for no apparent reason. And so I think that the price gives the independent more staying power. I think if your watches end up on the secondary market going for 1/10 of their original retail value, you start to become a non-viable business, because unless people are specifically willing to patronize the business and give them money just to give them money, why would you buy it for 100 grand if you could buy one in, let's be honest, it's going to be in near mint condition, because most of these things are bought by collectors that wear them very lightly, if at all, on the secondary market.
I think that I mean, it may not be an independent per se at this point, but a bit of an analogy example would be Lange. So not too long ago, you can get a Lange one in the teens. They just were. Yeah.
I remember looking at them in like 2010, so like in the middle of the recession, and maybe a used one in the teens. But if you were looking for gray market new, they were always like low 20s.
I'm talking,
I wanted the Darth, and I was just like, I don't know if I want to pay that much.
I'm talking all of it, right? So probably includes used. But like you pointed out, I mean, people don't beat these up, right? Like they're going to be in relatively good condition. Nice to see you, Artie, in the chat. I used to call them a Lange and depreciation is what I used to call those watches. Did I believe that they were great watches? Absolutely. But that was their whole shtick, was like, why you buy a Lange is you're getting, a superior quality, you could say, to Patek Philippe at a cheaper price. And it was the same thing Grand Seiko had. It was the same Grand Seiko value prop was you're getting Rolex or superior quality Rolex at Omega prices or even cheaper with Grand Seiko. Now, both of those brands have went through significant price increases, where Lange now doesn't have the same value proposition. And I think even more so, Grand Seiko does not have the same value proposition. And that's the key factor. That collector actually ended up admitting to me that, the hype is driving a lot of this whole, craze towards independence. And I think it's a little dangerous, right? I think it's a little reckless. I think a lot of people are just not thinking of longevity. Now, look, maybe those folks are just trying for a flip, right? They're trying to make that auction money, and that's okay. I got nothing against that. Like you said, we believe in capitalism here. But yeah, I mean, I just don't think that independents would have right. Every day there's some new independent on monochrome or Hodinkee that I've never heard of, right? That does great finishing and does all this great shit. But when you have a sea of them, at what point does it become a little saturated?
That definitely is the case, especially if they don't have their own unique style. Like the first two we started with, there's a reason why Moser feels comfortable having their name in clear lacquer on the dial. And then I argue Jordan could do the same thing. Jordan could take his name off the watches and you see them, you're going to immediately know what they are. I think that independents like that have this core aesthetic that is representative of the brand and incredibly unique, I think those will always be desirable. Kind of like the old, the saying, I forget which car executive says it, if you build a car that, half of the people hate it, half of the people love it, you're still going to sell it to half of the people. But if you build one that everybody's kind of blah about, maybe nobody buys it.
Yeah, it's a great point. And it's great that you brought up Jorn, Roy, because I would say that Jorn, and people are probably going to disagree with me here, but I do really feel that the Jorn craze was the catalyst for a lot of this independent, phenomenon that we're seeing right now with the interest in independence, and it was all artificial. If you follow the story back,
the rumor I heard it was 1916 just getting all the supply.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't gonna name friends or anything, but yeah, I mean, you're right. It's not unknown thing, right? It's
that was a rumor. I don't know if it's true. I'll take your word for it. If everybody says it, it's the De Beers model.
Well, they were cornering the market, right? You've got a small manufacturer that doesn't make a ton of watches, right? So there's not a ton of them out there, and when you're at a period of time when independents are not as highly sought after they are today. I'll give you my personal example. 2016, I had an allocation provided to me by Don Haynes, who used to be on the show years ago, for a FP Journe Cornet Bleu through Manfredi. And the only thing I had to do was draw, I think it was a $10,000 deposit, and I had to wait a year. Now, in today's day and age, $10,000 deposit and waiting a year is why the fuck wouldn't you do it? Back then, it was nah, man, I'm not waiting a year for a fucking watch and having to put my money out there. I could go buy a fucking Submariner for 30% off retail, for that 10 grand. Why the fuck am I going to do that?
No, and then here's the other thing. What do those retail for right now? Do you know?
Back then, it was 30. Something.
Yeah. You know what the original retail price of that thing was $18,000.
Yeah, again, you're right. It was a time when these watches just weren't as hyped as they are. And then you start seeing, this other company cornering the market, allegedly. I'm not going to say I know for sure, allegedly, cornering the market and buying up a lot of pieces and driving up the prices. Again, not a lot of supply, and it's a market they could corner. And look, does Jorn make great watches? Absolutely. No, all credit is due to, when it's a piece like that, I would say, in his pieces. I love a lot of his watches. But I think that they were really the catalyst that started this push. Because before then, I mean, did I hear of these brands? Sure. Have I heard of Dufour? Sure. Did I really care about Dufour? No, I didn't.
And there's also a factor of too, you're talking about the collector's space really started turning into what it is today with social media in the mid 2010s. And so if you're talking about the independents blowing up, I don't know, right before and then into COVID, a lot of these guys that have the money to just, keep on buying the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. They were already kind of through, Paddock and Longa and, whatever else that they were looking at. And they were looking at the next thing. So it might have also been, a confluence of circumstance there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think it's just being a credit to one only event, but yeah, I think it's a combination of it. It was a perfect storm, and it worked out for a lot of independents. The Ghost of Yiddish Gambino says you used to be able to get Joran at discounts from the ADs and boutiques not even 10 years ago. Yeah, it's wild, to just see how the independents have had this meteoric rise, I would say. But I also caution. I had a good hour and a half conversation with Kelsowitz, at his Airbnb in Geneva. We were waiting. We had just finished AHCI. It was right before the dinner, and he was telling me, like, "Man, Tan, I got bit by the bug. Right, I made the wrong decision, or maybe I should have gone with the Laurent Ferrier, and I really want the Sanders Shinjidev." And I kind of said, "Oh, slow down. Let's play this out. Like, why do you want these watches?" And I'm bought into the story, and I don't care if people troll me online or all sorts of stuff. But I say to him, I said, "Well, hold on. Like, I've seen you on the streams, and you really like showing off your pieces. Like, you do seek validation as much as you want to not admit it, and you are not going to get validation from any of these pieces, around these parts. It's just not going to happen. It's like going to where you're at, Roy." Wearing a Kerry Voutilainen, and is anybody going to even fucking know what that is? Like, probably not.
No, nobody here is going to know what anything is unless it's a Rolex, and even then, it's almost never going to get noticed. Like, I still had my DSSD when the Rolex tool watches and everything blew up, and obviously your average person isn't going to know the difference between that and a Submariner. And I had one person one time notice what it was. I wore that watch for 10 years.
I just try to tell people, like don't kid yourself, and be honest with yourself about why you collect, and the aspects of your decision or your purchasing, your buyer decision making process. Like, if it doesn't always have to be about value retention. It could be about finishing. It could be about history. It could be about iconic, whatever it is, right? But if value retention is somewhere in the puzzle, you gotta factor that in. And if you get hit in that area, it's going to sting as much as you tell me it's not. I think people are lying to themselves if it's. I was point blank blunt with Kelso. I was like, because Kelso tried to tell me, Roy, that it was about levels, right? That when you go to independence, you're at another level. And I was like, dude, like, I don't even look at it that way.
True.
Yeah, like it's just different taste. If you're seeking handmade anything, right, you have to live with the idea that it's potentially going to have some faults. It's going to have, it's going to have flaws. And are you going to be able to live with that coming from a world of almost flawless watches with Rolex and Patek Philippe and other brands? Ghost of Yiddish Gambino says Kelso spent a shit ton of money on a Brain Red UN Freak. I really like the guy, but he's going over the deep end. Sorry, Roy, I interrupt you there. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, especially with Kelso, if he was like saying stuff like that, like, why are you going Ferrier then? Because if you're going Ferrier, you're going design choice, and the picks in that regard, because he's in a tablature. He's not making that movement. Maybe he's finishing it, but he's certainly not producing that in house. He's using a case maker. He's using a dial maker. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so if you're gonna like snob out on like that kind of stuff, I definitely think this is the wrong brand, because the second you get in a pissing match with some other collector, you're going to get your ego hurt, and then all of a sudden, if that's your main thing, you're not going to like this watch anymore.
I want to plus up a Laurent Ferrier, so I'll kind of talk about the Ferrier side. So Kelsowitz was able to get us a private appointment at Laurent Ferrier during Watches and Wonders, so we were able to go into the booth and go into the back room and and see all of basically the entire lineup collection, as well as what they had that was new. And part of it was the story that we were meeting with the head of sales over there, and he told the story that I told this before, Roy. I don't know if you heard it, but Laurent Ferrier used to work at Patek Philippe. Patek Philippe has a, I guess it's a pension. I don't know if that's the word they use in Switzerland, but some form of a pension for life if you work at the manufacturer for 40 years. Okay, so you will
Yeah.
get your salary paid for life, after you leave the company. So Laurent Ferrier is on year 38. He was the head of the team that was designing the Aquanaut. Not a lot of people know that. I didn't know that. So that was pretty cool to hear. And it's interesting, the way he described it was that Laurent Ferrier learned from Philippe Stern, but also Laurent Ferrier taught Thierry Stern. So he has a pretty important
So
place
we
to
know
play.
who to blame now.
Maybe, right? Maybe. I don't think he controls Thierry Stern's ego, but that definitely he did give him some. Yeah.
Did you ask them about the Cubitist then? Do you speak French?
Nah, look, yeah. I look. I try when I'm at brands and stuff like that. I don't try not to talk about other brands because they're just a little, they get a little funny about that, right? Because they don't want to
I know,
be
I'm joking,
on record.
guys.
Yeah.
Troll it.
But
I would be interested in trolling him with that. Hey, it's like, hey, I heard that you were the teacher of Thierry Stern when it comes to this watch design stuff. What do you think about him saying it took 5 years to design a square Nautilus?
this is a great point from the Ghost of Yiddish Gambino. If you're looking if you're just looking for a handmade watch, go get a Garrick for sub 10K. Great watches and no need to drop used Porsche money or Laurent Ferrier or Journe. It's a great point, Yiddish Gambino. I don't know if you heard earlier in the stream we were doing the topic of what is the difference between a micro brand and an independent? Is there a difference? It's a very muddy, very gray area. I personally don't believe that there is that substantial a difference. Because there's just a spectrum. And I'll give you what I mean by that. Even in the corporations, let's talk about the big corporations that sell watches. We're talking about, Panerai, Breitling, Rolex, Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, all these guys. Huge spectrum of buyers. Just because your target buyer, is not Patek Philippe money and their, let's say, Rolex money at retail, right? We still consider Rolex a luxury watch, so just like in this whole independent side, I don't think that a micro brand and independents are necessarily mutually exclusive, because maybe it's similar to the corporations where it's just a wide spectrum of small businesses that produce watches. That was my thesis behind it, I guess you could say.
Yeah, like I said, I think that there's tremendous amount of overlap. There's tremendous amount of gray area in it, and it depends on the distinctions that you want to individually draw. But I really do believe when it comes to micro brands and independents, the people that insist on like one of these is separate from the other are going to be the ones that are spending tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars on it.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're not wrong, Roy. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. Just like yesterday's topic, right? Collectors versus investors. There's no right or wrong answer in that. I don't.
No, I think I would say there's a difference there. I think that I would say that there's an error in thought process if somebody says they're an investor. Just because, as you were talking about with these micro brands, even when it comes to the more major brands, all it takes is a shift in what a consumer thinks is desirable, and it's impossible to predict that. I mean, you were in this hobby, around back in 2008, 2009, 2010, and that a Nautilus was unsellable, a 15202 was unsellable. And I was not in the hobby at that time, but think about what happened with the boom and bust of the Rolex bubble back market. I mean,
or Panerai, right, in the 90s, right? There's a
or
lot of
Panerai. But the pre-Van Damme Panerais and stuff, those retain value. Panerai had the issue when they went mass market.
I just think that a lot of collectors, especially those around this space in YouTube, are they have. I mean, we're also a wide spectrum. We have collectors that are collecting for a long period of time, and we got a lot of new guys, right? And I think for the folks that are new, that is a very important point. That it's not even cyclical. It's very in vogue and it's fickle like that. It can change on a whim, and there's a lot of resistance.
It's pop culture.
Yeah, but there's a lot of resistance to it, right? Like whenever people talk about the watch trend going smaller, right? All the big watch guys are like, nah, it's bullshit. It's a conspiracy.
Well, it's hard to hear that if you've got a significant amount of money to you invested in something that is unquantifiable, kind of like this.
Ghost of Yiddish Gambino is saying, I think that's the difference between desiring watches for value retention overall issues. I really think that it's the balance, Yiddish Gambino, around why you're making the purchase. And if value retention ranks high, I think that that can often overpower the decision making process. And it can really get people skittish around buying pieces because they always just kind of think, well, okay, is this gonna lose money? It's always, and nobody wants to lose money, right? But I've always said this, Roy. If you're worried so much about losing money, if you're that worried about losing money, you can't afford the fucking watch. Like, let's
No,
be
I
honest.
agree 100%. If you're reliant on your ability to get out of it, then yeah, you probably should consider reducing the amount you're spending.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's and we know that there are people out there that are playing with their savings and playing with, I mean, Archie himself probably did that with his, his collection that got stolen. Like, and it obviously can be very dangerous. And it's just, look, you got to be careful, stay within your means and be happy, right? Like, I think that when we talk about exit watches and Grail watches,
And I mean, I've done this myself. I mean, I bought, like, I love my Omega Bullhead. There is no fucking way anybody's going to want to buy that from me for any, like, granted, I bought it quite well, but, still, I'm going to definitely take a hit on that. I bought a Day-Date with a green dial. Nobody is going to care about green dials in another, 5 years in all likelihood. So, and I'm okay with that. I just always wanted a green vignette dial, and I got it. So, it is what it is.
that's a tough one, man. Like, look, a lot of brands are getting, very colorful. I'm gonna annoy you here, Roy. Let me find this.
Oh yeah, here. And I love colorful watches. I'm wearing the red B09.
Oh yeah, all right, there you go. Here, let me make you full screen, Roy. Sorry, go ahead. Give us that wrist.
Here, I'll turn it back on.
One.
The lighting's not good here.
It's all good, man. We appreciate a very rare wrist shot we get from Roy. They removed it, but I'm gonna find. Well, they didn't remove it, but it's a bit further down on the website here. I'm gonna pull up your favorite campaign, the Museum of Moser Art. Let it pop, Roy. Let it pop. And
this bothers me so much because I love the irreverent attitude of Moser, but I just feel like this is leaning into it way too much. I think that they've gone too far with that. You know what I mean?
Look, is it cool to throw stone dials and enamel dial? It's cool. Don't get me wrong. It's just a little much. I agree with you. I think
this is good. This is gimmicky now. It's not like, hey, we're gonna do these cool color fume dials. It's like, okay, you can have it in all the colors of the rainbow, and like I don't know. It's there's a difference between like what they were doing before, whereas this just feels like a gimmick.
It's super strange to me because having gone to Geneva and seeing how probably, I'd use the word conservative, traditional, it was or it felt in Geneva. This is strange to me that they would think that the market coming from people that are in Geneva, obviously Moser's not in Geneva, but let's say in Switzerland, either Geneva is completely either I'm completely off about how Geneva is, or I just can't see a Swiss watch manufacturer thinking this is a good idea. I'm talking about people that are going to take my cap off going into a fucking AD, like, you know what I mean?
Well, they're from the German part of Switzerland, right? The Germans famous for their, I don't know, artistic flair and irreverent attitude and humor and etc.
Yeah, you understand. But this is the part that kind of stings. Is I think I do like a lot of Moser's watches. I think they've done a lot of interesting and funny stuff in the past. I think this is just a little out of left field. I think that this is going to be a big swing and a miss. I really don't get it. Like when I remember Roy's anger at this when it first came out. That's why I pulled it up because I know Roy hates him.
And I mean, if it's probably made to order. So it's like, okay, we can source all these stones, and if you give us the money, you'll get the watch in like 9 months or something like that. I honestly wonder how many they'll even make. And then if somebody comes up with an utterly ridiculous color combination, are they going to tell them no?
Hey, Daddy.
All right, I think Roy's got his family there, so I'm gonna talk about this watch here because we're just at Moser, and this was a new release. This is the Moser Pioneer Seconds Sunny Side Up, right? And this is how they market it. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Who gives a cluck? Like it's I don't know, man. Like Yiddish Gambino, like they were witty in the past. I just think they're trying hard now. Like it's just becoming tryhards, and it's just not
What's
like
the
it's not
saying?
working.
I am become the meme.
Yeah, maybe like it's just Roy. It's disheartening to see Moser go down this path of. I just don't know if
The thing is, I like this yellow though. Like the marketing is stupid. I like this yellow.
Yeah, I mean, are you gonna buy the Moser Pioneer Sunny Side Up? Like, couldn't they call this something else? Like, the Sunburst or
And
something?
I know a lot of people didn't like the collab with Studio Underdog and the Passion Fruit, but I thought the color combination was good. I thought it was a nice looking watch. But
All right, we got a super chat from my friend Muhammad Ali out in the UK. 5 British pounds, man. It's super late, 11:30 p.m. over there. I appreciate you checking us out late at night there, Muhammad Ali. Tan knows my exit watch. I definitely do. In the meantime, I wore my Pepsi Moser Matter. I've seen his Moser in person. Beautiful watch. VC Overseas and Tiffany Blue OP. Muhammad Ali just got a Tiffany Blue OP. Big congrats to him. His exit watch is the Aquanaut. Roy, we've been rooting him on to get the Aquanaut. Hopefully he gets it very soon. I know that he's been working with.
Is he on a list? Because I hope to God he's not paying secondary market prices for that.
No. He Muhammad Ali only buys from the AD. So like his Pepsi, right? Like I met him a couple of years ago in London, and he hadn't got his Pepsi at the time. I think he had just bought a Cermet, and anyways, he was the Pepsis were coming down, Roy. Like they weren't as hyped as they were before, and it wasn't a thought in his mind. He didn't want to go secondary market. He's like, no, I've obviously bought a lot of pieces from my dealer. I'm not going to get too deep into his story, but and he always buys retail. So he's working, I know, with his with this Paddock AD. And look, I'm really rooting for him. I think he's a guy who deserves it, and this guy who's going to wear that watch. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, if honestly though, if somebody has the money, that the time is worth more to them than that markup. I mean, God bless, but even if that time, I don't know if I could ever wrap my head around some of those things with the multiples of the retail price, which they go for today.
Yeah, I mean, is it worth the money paying, what they're asking for these days? No, it's not. I mean, I've owned a 5711. I can tell you guys straight up, that's not an $80,000 watch. That is not a $100,000 watch. That is at max, if I were to give it anything, it's probably a $25,000 to $30,000 watch. It's, you're basically getting
kind of like what it retailed for back until 7 years ago.
Yeah, look, it's a Calatrava in a different case. Like that's really what it is, guys. It's not anything special. It's a good watch. Don't get me wrong. I saw a few of them at Watches and Wonders, and honestly, the sentiment that I got from other people around the room was it's a bit meh. It's like seeing a Daytona. It's we get the hype, we get all this stuff, but I think people are a little bit tired of it, Roy, and people want something different. And I think that it's important to understand the watches are.
I'm counting on that for the Royal Oak market and the Nautilus market, because I shoot myself in the foot to this day for not buying one of the two or both back in 2013 when I'm like, just having kids now, I don't want something very delicate. I'll be able to get it in the future. Did not work out.
No, well, look, I think it may work out soon. It's possible. I'm gonna pull up this comment from Yiddish Gambino. Actually, we saw this watch earlier. Yiddish Gambino. I had it up on the screen. My Grail watch is new Paddock 6159 Smoke Sapphire Retrograde Perpetual. Can't wait to buy on secondary for 30% off on 2 years, like all Paddock dress. 100%. Yiddish Gambino. I actually showed the predecessor to this watch, the 5159. and it's very like old manish, like straight lugs, like officer, kind of like officer style case. It had Roman numerals. It's just a very traditional, old looking retrograde. Then I obviously showed this one, and it's very contemporary. I agree with you. This is one of my favorite releases, at the show. Look, retrogrades are not very popular. Yiddish Gambino. It's very cool, because I was pointing out that it's pretty rare that Patek Philippe uses a big rotor movement for their perpetual counters. Generally speaking, they use the 240 micro rotor movement for a lot of their perpetual calendars. But here you've got, the upgraded version of the 324. Like my perpetual 5320 has a 324 movement, which is the same that's in the Nautilus. and which is the same that's in the Calatrava. So yeah, it's a cool piece, man. It's one of my favorites as well. Paddock Chris says, I don't have a Grail watch, but finding it interesting hearing others and what others consider their Grail. Yeah, I mean, Roy told me about. Was the Tourbillon Overseas? Was it a Grail or was it an exit watch or was it both?
It would. I wouldn't say it's a Grail watch because there are watches out there that I really love that I'd probably put as Grail in that I probably would never be in a position to buy them. Whereas that one, if I wanted to, I could. It would be an exit watch if I was going down to one watch. If I was getting rid of everything and I would just want to go to a one watch collection, that's what I would get.
HR, I don't know if you heard, you got a shout out from Archie Luxury on one of his videos. Something about the live streams are syncing or something like that. Go check that out. He called out you and the Narc. He's like, those two fuckers, man, I'm done with them. So yeah, you should check that out, HR. It's pretty funny. Thomas Burnett, these pop Mosers remind me of the Nomos Tangente Date 38 watches in 31 different colors that were brought out last year's Watches and Wonders. I like those Nomoses. And like that, Moser are using stone dials. Yeah, look, there's some good to it, Tom. It's just, I don't know. It's just a little out there for me. I think Moser's trying way too hard, and it's just not.
I like that Patek here, though. They're bringing back the hobnail bezel, and and then they have it on the side of the case on some of their watches. I really like that they're trying to bring the hobnail back into fashion.
I'm gonna give you a bit of a story here, Muhammad Ali. Thank you for the super chat. 5 British pounds. Tan is years ahead of the market. Experienced the 5711 before the hype moved on. It was funny because you guys all know CB in the chat. He's a friend of mine. And back then, this was years ago, maybe 2018, 2017 on the streams. CB used to give me shit. He was like, what the fuck does this guy know? He sold a fucking Nautilus for a Calatrava. So it was funny, back in the day to hear that. But yeah, I had the Nautilus and I had the Royal Oak at the same time. I had the 15300 Royal Oak, and I had the 5711. And I felt that the Royal Oak was just outside of the movement and the finishing was a better watch. And I was kind of like, you know what? I spent 99% of the time looking at it dial up, so I'll probably just stick with the Royal Oak and flick the 5711 and go a little bit deeper. I started learning a bit more about Patek Philippe. Their core was complicated dress watches. So I really wanted to immerse myself into the brand a little bit more. That's why I got rid of it. It just wasn't that special to me. Yeah, was everybody shook when they saw one? Yeah, sure. It was always when you go to a watch meet, everyone's like, oh, it's the fucking Nautilus, right? But yeah, it wears off after a while, Muhammad Ali, and it's kind of annoying actually. I believe.
Well, I mean, it's I don't know. If you're in a place where you're going to get the attention for it, I definitely could see how that would be wearing on you. The other, it's when I was looking at them, I could have bought both the 15202 and the 5711 new on the gray market for less than the final retail cost of the 5711. And especially with the 5711 and the build quality of it, that made sense. I just that watch, even at its retail price of the final production at what was it, 37,500? I just can't see it. The bracelet is kind of flimsy. That clasp is terrible by modern standards, but it is what it is.
I've got so our boy Rich Mitch just posted this in the chat here. He's got the traditional. What do you think of this one, Roy? It's 14,000 British pounds. Look, it's got.
I don't like the dial. I mean, just the balance of that with the power reserve, the date, and the small seconds. I don't like. It doesn't do it for me. That's the reason why a lot of the Breguets and stuff, I'm not fans of them. I'm fans of their more simpler watches, but when you start to get to Breguet complications, this kind of layout drives me crazy.
I don't really have a beef with it, Rich Mitch, if you like it. I would kind of agree with Roy that if I were to use, if I were to get this kind of a guilloche dial, I'd want it to be more simple. Just hours, minutes, small seconds, maybe. Just because you see a lot. You see a lot more of the guilloche or the guillochage, when you have it's more simpler dial. So for me, yeah, like all the complications are not really super interesting to me in that sense, but it's not a bad watch and it's not at a bad price, and you're getting high horology. So that's what I'm saying. You get a lot of bang per buck in that traditional line, um, Rich Mitch, and I think you should explore it because you're gonna get a real heavy hitter watch, horologically speaking, at a very good price. Because honestly, people just aren't looking. This is one thing I learned about YouTube and social media. Roy, is often people are just not looking, and once you start talking about it on YouTube, when I was talking about the 5212 a couple of years ago, um, there was a lot of folks from our community that were buying them. Um, and you started it was cool to see that. So it's just people probably just aren't looking, on some of these pieces. They're just not talked about. There's thousands of models out there, from hundreds, from lots of brands, Rich Mitch. So you just got to expand your horizons and just be open to stuff that's just not hyped, I guess.
Well, and then you're talking about people that perhaps get into the market based on hype, and then when they get their first watch, they find out, actually, you know what? Really like this. And then they start going down rabbit holes and stuff, and then you come across these, very, well-made watches from Vacheron or maybe some dress APs and things that aren't appreciated. And the people that move away from that to become true like watch collectors versus just buying it so that people recognize what's on your wrist.
Absolutely. Yiddish Gambino says, nice to hear someone else who has the overseas perpetual as Grail of an exit watch. My exit watch would be the overseas ultra thin skeleton perpetual in white gold with blue accents on the dial. I've seen that watch. That's really nice. Yiddish Gambino. VC makes a lot of good pieces. A brand that's not talked about. I really enjoyed seeing their boutique on Rue du Rhône or around Rue du Rhône in Geneva. Cool people. Like, they treated me all right, except for the fact they told me to take off my baseball cap, which, look, it's not the end of the world. LV, Tan thoughts on the Apatic 5800. So this is call it a mid-size Nautilus. So I got to have a photo here from Watch Pro showing the two 5800 on the right. I believe this is a 5711 on the left. And look, if you got a smaller wrist and you like the Nautilus, I don't see any problem with it. It's not for me. I prefer the larger size. Yeah, that's pretty much what I would say about the 5800. I don't know, Roy. Would you go with the 5800, a smaller Nautilus?
No, I mean, I got no reason to go smaller. The 5711 fits well on my wrist, so that's what I'd want. I'd always feel like I compromised if I got the 5800.
All right, we got a good opinion, a differing opinion from us, Roy. Muhammad Ali, I don't think there is a Grail or exit watch for any of us. Our tastes and aspirations change, and we all move on to a new batch of watches. Yeah, Muhammad Ali, where this came from, I was having a discussion on another channel, Trap Vision 3D, good friend of the show, and he was saying that, for him, there is no exit watch. He's going to keep buying watches until the day he dies. And his exit watch is going to be, his guest said, my exit watch will be the watch they bury me in, basically. So, there are a group of people, and collectors and enthusiasts that feel that there is no exit watch, Roy. It doesn't exist. It is,
especially if you're in a position where you can keep doing that and you have fun with it, you enjoy it. Like I said, God bless, just do it responsibly. And if you can do that responsibly, awesome. Like, you've won at life.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and again, this is where it gets into, does price matter? Do tiers matter? If you believe in tiers, like I said, watch collecting, is a wide spectrum of different price points and different types of pieces, right? Like,
yeah, and I mean, I think there's a lot of people that honestly that are in, let's say you can spend maybe mid tens of thousands of dollars that end up driving the snobbery with related to, like, oh, this is a different tier of watch and blah, 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 blah. A lot of the people that just have the money to buy whatever the hell they want, they're just looking at it like, oh, I think that's cool. Does it matter if it's from Rolex? Does it matter if it's from Omega? Or does it matter if it's from Journe? Or no, they don't care. And they're not looking down on somebody else or some other brand just because it's arbitrarily, not this upper tier thing.
Jay Sykes, that's a flip, my man. A flip, not a drip or a skip. That's a flip. Yeah, look, it's some people, like you said, can do that in perpetuity till the end of time. But like for me, Roy, I think watch collecting is very vast, and I think you're doing yourself a big disservice if you're just chasing what other people are chasing, or what other people have, because it gets real boring real fucking quick. There's maybe 2 dozen, you could call it a little over a dozen to 2 dozen, say 2 dozen real hype watches out there. Um, it just gets boring after that, right? There's thousands upon thousands of different models of watches that you can enjoy. You can, wear on the wrist. Yeah, are you going to get the kudos? You're not going to get the kudos you'd get if you're wearing a 5711. Do you care about that? Some people do, right? Some people gravitated to this hobby, Roy, because Rolexes were a status symbol and people aspired to them, and that's all they cared about was, I just need to put a Rolex on my wrist. And I think a lot of us.
Here's another question for you, because it's something that I think about myself, is that I'd like to par down the collection and go to fewer pieces, because I just don't like the idea that I can't wear the stuff that I have necessarily, and I feel like I'm almost doing myself a disservice in that way. So I have a hard time in that regard with growing to like a much larger collection.
Joseph D says every collector has their fun watch. I'd agree with this. I like to call this the guilty pleasure watch, Joseph D. I always ask people, like, what's your guilty pleasure watch? The watch that you love, but just everybody fucking hates. That's your fun watch, right? Something that I think you enjoy. But you could also mean that you have a fun watch, like a swatch that has got a funky design or whatever. And you just like wearing it. I mean, I don't disagree with that. Bigger collections, right? I don't really believe in these massive collections. I think that's the art of collecting, is to be able to be discerning, to be able to choose wisely, and that's the challenge, right? That to me really excites me. Is I don't need to amass and hoard a museum of watches, because I probably would never wear them. I want to be able to enjoy these. So, what do I really, really, really want if I had the choice of what I can buy, right? Like, that's what I find fun. I really don't get these big collections personally, but people are hoarders, Roy, and nothing against that, right?
It's true. Yeah.
Pickle
No, I
says,
couldn't do it myself. It would wear on me mentally.
yeah, Pickle says 5212 is amazing. I agree with you. Watch Collector UK is asking if I'm all good. Yes, sir, I am. I'm just filling in for old Archibald today. His flight got massively delayed. He's not going to make it in time for the show. So I'm covering the show until 8 o'clock Eastern. So that's for about another hour. And then Eddie is going to take over on the dungeon. The shows are linked, so we'll send you over there for some fun with old Eddie on the dungeon. Jay Sykes says, I once had about 10 watches and was stressed out about storage winding. Now I'm down to 4 and much happier. Roy, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to go down to 4, but I like my B09 a lot. I like my bullhead a lot. I like my my Day-Date a lot. I'd never get rid of my Panerai, because that was a gift from my parents for graduating school. And then so it's like, okay, I could get rid of the other, like the 2 Omega Dive watches, but I don't know.
That's an interesting choice for a gift. I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure they knew that you liked watches. How did that come about? Panerai? Were you asking for a Panerai, and why were you?
I graduated school in the mid 2000s, so.
Okay, it was just a product of the times. But look, it's a good point though, Roy, because watches are fashion, right? And fashions change. We all know this. I think you're lying to yourself if you think that fashions won't change. If you're hoarding or amassing what's popular today, it may not all be popular tomorrow. Some of them, I think, have a higher incidence or higher likelihood of being popular. Like, I don't think the Rolex Submariner is going anywhere. That watch has been popular for 70, 80 years, call it. Like, it's a popular watch, and it's just not going to be unpop. It's timeless. There's just some watches, Roy, that I think are what would you think were timeless watches that you could think of, just at the top of your head?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I just drove over a river that for some reason causes cell reception to drop
Oh
out.
yeah, no worries. So I was talking about the Rolex Submariner being timeless. It's I said watches are fashion, and the Rolex Submariner is timeless. What are other timeless watches you think will kind of supersede this whole trends in fashion, when it comes to wristwatches?
I mean, in general, anything in an oyster case, because that's slowly evolved its shape over the last, 70 years, whether it's the sub, the GMT, whether it's the Datejust, the Date 8, anything from Rolex virtually is timeless because there's never a drastic change. A few exceptions like the, what is that? King Midas and, stuff like that aside. I think that I would put the current Breitling Premier collection as being kind of timeless. It's a 1940s design. It translates well into the modern era. I think it'll still look good, 30 years from now. I honestly think most of Patek's collection is going to look good, 30 years from now, because they're all very classically styled evolution, taking bits and pieces from their history and then bringing them into modern watches, much more so than like Vacheron or AP, because Vacheron can get a bit out in the weeds on certain pieces, and then AP is, the Royal Oak Watch Company and everything else they do.
Well, I think Vacheron's a good example, because if you're to think of what does a typical Vacheron look like, right? If you said about a Rolex, right, very easy, like you said, oyster case. If you take Patek, what does a typical Patek look like? Calatrava case, right? Or Nautilus case, right? Like, very easy to decipher the brand or associate the brand to a case shape. AP, just because the dominance of the Royal Oak in their collection being pretty much their only other watch, you could say, outside of the 1159. I'm not considering the offshore as a separate lineup from the Royal Oak. It's a Royal Oak, right?
Yeah. No, I agree.
But Vacheron is a hard one, man. Like, yeah, I mean, there's the overseas, but the overseas was never iconic. Like, when you think of Vacheron,
it also looks completely different than the Gen 1. The Gen 1 does not look a thing like the current one.
Yeah, like esoteric. Like, it's a good exercise, right? Like, if I think of Breitling, I'm thinking Navitimer, right? Some other people are thinking Super Ocean. Some other people are thinking Breitling Colt. There's a lot of different aspects to Breitling, but if you're saying, well, what does a Breitling look like? It's an Navitimer. What does a Panerai look like? To me, it's a Luminor. It's not a Radiomir. It could be a Radiomir, but it's more the Luminor. That crown guard, Roy, you can spot that a mile away. Like, that's a Panerai. That's one of the cool things about Panerai is its identifiability. It's not very easy.
Same with Omega and the Speedmaster. I mean, you could identify a modern Speedmaster from the originals. So
So Muhammad Ali says the traditional for VC. Like, if you took VC, off the dial, and you put something else, like, a lot of folks may not say, well, that looks like a VC. And so that's where I kind of struggle with that brand, because I think that is part of their lack. Why they're not successful right now is they just don't have. I don't think they have a lot of direction of where they're going. And look, this year they did the whole Maltese cross motif. I think that's fucking played out, honestly, Muhammad Ali. I think they're doing it way too much. They're leaning way too into it, and people don't associate very much with it. So, I mean, why are you doing that, in my opinion? But look, some other people love it, right? And I'll show you somebody who does love it, because he does have an overseas, a beautiful rose gold overseas. We got No Biggie Sal, $5. Thanks so much for joining us, Big Sal. Says, loving the watch talk, fellas. My Grail is the 5270 1R. That's perpetual calendar chronograph in rose gold. Until then, I'll keep hustling and hope to be like Tam when I grow up someday. Appreciate it. No biggie. So I'm going to pull up a 5270 1R Patek Philippe for our boy Biggie Sal. This is a super stunner. Honestly, Big Sal, this could be it for me as well, in terms of perpetual calendar chronographs. I showed Archie yesterday that I would buy potentially the green dial version of the platinum perpetual calendar.
I love this on the bracelet with the black dial, so that the rose just pops. Like, it's awesome. I'm not a rose gold guy, but I like this a lot.
Yeah, Big Sal has his overseas 4500 rose gold. Like, it just pops, man. He brings it out. He brought it out to the dinner in New York last year. I said to him, it's like, look, I want to give you the W here. I liked Brody's Moser I think it has. I don't know if it's an enamel dial. I forget. Brody's watch, his Moser Streamliner. But Big Sal's was my second favorite, which was the rose gold VC overseas. Beautiful watch. But yeah, like 5270p perpetual counter chronograph.
Yeah.
Can't get better than that, I think, for me. Grand Complication Patek Philippe. One of my favorites. Jay Sykes says, I was considering the VC 1921 driver's watch, but couldn't get past seconds dial different having orientation to numerals. Yeah, like a lot of people like that watch. I think it's because it's unique. It's just a bit different, and it looks cool in that sense. I don't dislike the watch. I don't love the watch. Personally, I'm kind of indifferent to it personally, but it's got a lot of fanfare. I don't know, Roy. Are you a fan of that 1921 Historiques? Or?
I am. I like it a lot. My favorite version is the limited platine version, where they did it with the silver dial and the applied numerals.
Let's have a look here.
The normal platinum one has blue numerals but the platine has that textured platinum dial that they do on the platine collection, and then it has applied Breguet numerals.
Yeah, I think this is the one here, Roy. Applied Breguet.
That's it.
Yeah, and also Breguet hands. So that is pretty cool. That is really nice. Very, very nice. I think everyone's a sucker for not only Breguet hands, but Breguet numerals on a watch. And, Patek does it very sparingly. I think Vacheron doesn't do it very often either. So when you do that combination of Breguet hands, Breguet numerals, it's generally a very special piece.
And the hard part I have about that is, like, with a simple dress watch like this, there are so many that I like that are kind of, especially if you're talking on the secondary market, that end up in the same price category, that assuming I was going to pull the money out to buy one of them, I just think I'd be paralyzed by the choice because there's so many good options.
Yeah, I agree. Big Sal saying he would part with his entire collection for it. I told that story yesterday when I was on with Archie, Big Sal, how there is a video on his channel where he was willing to sell not only all his watches at a time, but his the shoe collection, the purse collection, like every collection he had of collectibles for a 3970, which is 2 generations back, perpetual counter chronograph. He didn't end up doing it. Archie never really took the plunge, Roy, into grand complication. At least what Patek Philippe calls grand.
I don't know if he could be happy with one watch, even if it's a perpetual chrono. I just don't know if that's in him.
You know what? For me, I think he's getting there personally. I really do think that the burglary really was a gut punch to him. It was his life savings. It was pieces with money he used from inheritances. I think his grandfather, had passed, and he got an inheritance from his grandfather, and it was special to him. And then really took the wind out of his sails when he had that burglary. He's been trying to rebuild his collection in his own kind of way, Roy. And even him, right? He seeks validity and validation on the internet just as much as many of us do. And, you do see him get a little frustrated when people are not liking his Breguet choices or his JLC master compressor choices, right? Like he used to turn to me. Look,
that's funny because I do like the master compressor. Probably like that more than the Breguets for the most part. So, but that was probably the most hated watch out of all of them.
No Biggie Sal says the 1921 is a great watch, not the easiest watch to live with. The crown position makes it a bit tough to wind, and it has a small winding gear, and you have to turn about 200 plus times. That would be probably pretty annoying. Biggie Sal, don't get me wrong, I would not want to wind a watch like that 200 times. But look, it's a cool concept. It's got a case that is pretty unique. People will know you're wearing a Vacheron. Likely, if you have this, on the wrist, then they could probably see it from far away. I get the appeal of it. I'm indifferent to it personally. It's not, it's not the, for me at least, it's just not. It's not something that interests me that much that I would go and make this purchase. But I get why people like it. It's a cool watch. I don't disagree. But yeah, I mean, look, it's always beautiful. Breguet numerals, Breguet hands on a watch. I think that's cool. I like the fact, like Roy said, they put the applied hour markers, applied Breguet numerals on it. which is pretty cool. In that
Also,
sense.
the case shape, like all the pictures usually show it from this angle, and even when you get it on the side in pictures, it the way the case comes across in person is different than the pictures. Like it's really neat case shape in person.
When you guys hear us talking, I'm going to pivot here, Roy, a little bit. I don't know why the Paddock site is bugging out at the top, but this term grand complications, right? So when we talk about grand complications at Paddock Philippe, I don't want people to get confused with the term grand complication. A grand complication is historically defined as a wristwatch that has a minute repeater, a chronograph, and a perpetual calendar. Some people substitute a tourbillon, sometimes in the mix to call it a grand complication. I don't believe a tourbillon is a complication, so I'm going to say no to that one. But that is what a true grand complication is. So it's kind of that trifecta of minute repeater, chronograph, and perpetual calendar. But at Paddock Philippe, they call many complications grand complications. Right here on the first row, you see the perpetual calendars. These two here kind of in the middle. 5327s are the evolution of the old 3940. Our good friend Watch Reporter, who likes to spruik his 3940. This is the lineage from that 3940. You've got the sub-dial variant of the perpetual calendar. Roy, these are the biggest, I guess, critique of this watch that people have is it's just not legible, for people. It's a 39 mil watch. It's not small, but it's just a lot of stuff
I like
going
it a
on.
lot.
It's beautiful. It's classic, but it is hard to read for some people, and they just don't like that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that gets me on this is I really like that new micro rotor movement that's in the inline perpetual, and then you just get a base movement with this, which is kind of frustrating.
Venetian Cedar says, I absolutely vouch for AC3's JLC. I had the pleasure of personally handling it. Great quality and very nice in person. I haven't seen it in person. I still call it the masturbation compressor. Not really for me. So Roy was talking about the inline perpetual calendar. I call this the unibrow, Roy. You may be able to unsee I don't know if you'll be able to unsee the unibrow, but this is the unibrow perpetual calendar.
Heard that. I love the new one because you can actually and the colors.
You're breaking up a bit, Roy, for me.
Yeah, once I get around this corner, it should be better, but I like it a lot. I love the new movement, and I would take that salmon with the blackened markers and hands all day.
Yeah, but the unibrow, Roy, you got a big-ass unibrow staring you right in the face, right in the middle almost of the dial. Come on, man. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a cool watch.
It's not the greatest. It's not the greatest aesthetic, but I think you don't see it as much with the salmon. And I like the style of the markers. I love the 3448 inspired case. I love the new movement. And the unibrow thing, it doesn't bother me. Do I think it's the prettiest? Would I prefer it being a standard aperture? Yes, but it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I just like to ruin it for people because they'll constantly look at it and call it the unibrow. So the one on the left is
if this was just a modern 3448, I'd be happier with that. But it is what it is.
For sure. The one on the left is the newer version of the watch I have. I have the cream dial version. This is the salmon dial, 5320. Obviously perpetual calendar. This is aperture style perpetual calendar. So you have the day and the month in the aperture and the date. In the sub dial with the moon phase. Very clean layout, syringe hands, Arabic numerals. A inspiration. Paddock doesn't like to admit this, but I saw the 1591 in person at the museum, and to me, that watch is a spitting image of this one. So that was a cool piece, one of my favorites. On the right, we have the 6159, which Yiddish Gambino and I were talking about earlier. Retrograde perpetual calendar. Cool new clear dial. I don't know if it's sapphire, but really, really cool. I'm not going to go into the women's stuff over here. Next lineup in the perpetual calendar range, you got the perpetual calendar chronographs. You can distinguish them by the letter. J would be jaune, which means yellow in French, so yellow gold. P is for platinum. This is the one I told yesterday, Roy, to Archie that he's like, well, Tan, what would you get from Paddock Philippe if you were to get a perpetual calendar chrono? And this is the one I said I would buy, the green dial in the platinum Roy, I don't know. I know you have some green dials, and I know you like some green dials. I don't care if this is out of fashion. I think this is cool.
It's probably out of fashion, but they probably made so few that it'll probably all go for.
Oh, it's breaking up.
Dial. Hold on.
Yeah, I don't know. I was talking to Higgins, and Higgins is like, "Tan, are you an old man? Like, this is an old man's watch." I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like, I've tried these watches on this. I think this is 41 mils. Like, they're fucking nice. CB fella. I mean, they've said to me, "Tan, it's not a watch that you're gonna be able to live with every day. It's manual wind, perpetual counter. That means you can't put it on a winder. You're gonna have to wind that bitch." And I could say that this could be for me an exit watch, also a Grail watch as well. Obviously has a perpetual calendar in it. Exit watch for sure. Would I? Exit watch slash you could say one and done. And what that means, when we talk about one and done, it doesn't mean that you have to use your watch in every circumstance. Some people, to them, they have to be that way. For me, it's not the case. For me, this is art. This is it's special. It's something that for me, I think it's a lot more than just a tool, and therefore I'm going to use it for its purpose. A lot of stuff, Roy, is jewelry, right? It's not even.
Yeah.
It's not even about
100%.
time. It's not even about the timekeeping, right? Like to me, it's the art. It's wearable art. It's a statement. It's a lot of things. And so when Archie says, "Well, you can't have this as your one and done because it's not water resistant," I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm not using it for that purpose. I'm not taking it into the pool for the sake of taking it in the pool." You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Although they now claim that everything is a true 30 meters, so sure you can't take it in the pool.
yeah, it's. I mean, it's just because you can do something doesn't mean you have to, right? Like.
Yeah.
It's like owning guns, right? Like you don't have to go shoot people, right? Like you can go shoot, at the range and have fun, or just collect and have fun. Like you don't have to use them for purposes that they are used for in other circumstances.
Have you seen this green dial in person? Because I'm really particular on like green and reds, where they can be amazing and then they can be crap, and it can be just subtly different.
Let me look up if it's 5070p green. I'll find an actual photo.
I mean, I wouldn't even trust any actual photo. This is something you got to see in natural light yourself.
Yeah, I haven't seen one of these in person.
I doubt they would get it wrong. It looks like it would be good, but that's the one thing that would make me hesitant to be like pulling the trigger on it if couldn't see it before buying it.
Yeah, like for me, I like this piece. I don't think it's going to be. I don't think I'll be underwhelmed. I think with the screen from the photos I've seen, but it's possible, right, that it's completely off. We got Mike the Snake joining us. How's it going, Mikey?
Yeah, it's going good. I agree with Roy 100%. Like, I'm not real big on green, and I do like red, but it's got to be just the right green and just the right red. If not, then green is like one of my lesser favored colors. But this one, like Royce said, the pictures they really make it look amazing. I'd love to see one in person to make a judgment.
Absolutely, Mike. Now that you're here, Mikey, I'm going to do a bit of a pivot into a different watch. I was doing some Patek Philippe talk. I get accused sometimes of doing too much Patek Philippe talk, so I got Mikey here with me. Somebody who knows a bit about stones and likes Rolex. This was one of my favorite releases from Rolex this year, Mikey. Rolex Beauty Master Tiger's Iron.
Tiger's Iron?
Yeah, so Tiger's Iron is a combination of Tiger's Eye, red jasper, and some shade of hematite. I don't know if it's silvery or if it's black. I mean, I think it could be either one.
Oh yeah, hematite can show as red because it's real high in iron, and if you polish it, it comes out that really dark, shiny gray.
Mm-hmm.
And they make hematite, necklaces, balls, that are like silver, like almost lead gray in color, silver, shiny balls. But if you chip them, they chip brick red in color. inside, and so that Tiger's iron might have like red striations through it if it's got hematite in it as well. This dial that I'm looking at is fucking off the hook.
Yeah, I'm trying to zoom in as much as I can, because you can see shades of obviously black, yellow,
Gold, yellow,
red.
gold. I
There-
don't see red, but
I'm looking at the photo on my.
oh yeah, there's a little bit of where you, yeah. So that's the hematite in it. Wow. Now this is a solid gold watch,
Yeah,
or
it's
is
rose.
this
It's rose gold. Yeah.
okay? Yeah. It'd be neat if they made this in steel. So you know, it wasn't 60,000 or something or more. Because this is something I would like to, go out of my way to get if it weren't like just so far out of my reach.
Yeah, look,
Um,
we've been talking today about like exit watches. I'm sure you've been listening to a bit of the show, Mikey.
I haven't. I just logged
Okay,
on
cool,
5 seconds ago.
cool. Maybe I'll bring you in then on the topic. So, um, exit watches and Grail watches, Mike. Do you think that your exit watch can be different than your Grail watch, or do you think that your Grail watch is your exit watch?
No, I think they're two separate things because I'm in that very position right now because right now my life is in a state of flux. My mother's doesn't have long. We just got some new news that's not good. Um, my life's going to be changing drastically here, and so I'm hoping to get my 41 sub, and I may stop there for a while, right?
Hmm.
So that may be my exit watch for a while, but my Grail watch, if life allows it and my finances allow it, will pretty much my first initial like obtainable Grail, of course, is the 4500 blue 3-hander, right?
Yep. Yep.
Um, the overseas, but of course, if I had 60 or 100,000, there's probably some others that I might choose over that, but within like the possibility of maybe in my lifetime my possibly being able to own it, the overseas falls into that category because like right around 30 is probably maybe yeah, I might be able to get one of those
Where does
someday.
this 30,000 price point come from? That because that's a $24,000 watch.
It's 34,000.
24.
24. Oh, well, it was up as high as 60 at one point. I don't really
Yeah,
follow
but
the price.
those are dumb. Those are dumb secondary market prices. This is an overseas. It doesn't stay up there. If you wanted to get one at retail, you might have to wait a bit, but you could get.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't really follow the prices too much, and then like right now I'm trying to get my hands on a 41 sub and you know, uh I probably I mean I've always had enough to go run and buy one, but I'm just not going to pay 14 for it, or 13.5. I'm hoping to find one for a little bit less
Yeah,
or
no, because
save.
I'm just saying, like, if you're really looking, is the overseas, even the blue, is getting pretty close to retail on the secondary market.
Huh.
So if 24 is a realistic stretch for you, I would start investigating that if that's the one that you've always dreamt of.
Well, that was
Um,
that was Mikey. That was going to lead into my next question because you just kind of differentiated your exit watch and your Grail watch. Mikey, let me ask you philosophically. Roy and I debated this a little earlier. Was should your Grail watch be attainable, or do you believe that your Grail watch should never? It should be aspirational.
oh no, I think it should be obtainable.
Like I didn't want to. I didn't want to make assumptions. Right, 24K can be aspirational to a lot of people, right, and it's not attainable. Or we're talking relative terms to some of these really high end pieces,
I
right?
mean, it's kind of like okay, I've got my favorite Ferrari and my favorite Lamborghini and my
Mhm.
favorite, Koenigsegg, right? I love them. They're crazy. They're fucking amazing. But there is zero chance that I will ever fucking get my hands on one, right? That you can love things without, ever being able to own them. I wouldn't call those my Grail cars, though. My Grail car is a car that I eventually may be able to somehow get my hands on it, and I seem to be bouncing from Grail car to Grail car, somewhat lately. Um, but I am so, I am, I am so stoked with the car I got now. This is a long term. I'm gonna have so much fun with this little car I got now that I don't need to even think about cars anymore. Fuck
Mhm.
that. I got the car I want. That's gonna do everything I want it to do and more. And so that's off. That weight has been lifted off of me. I don't have to think about cars anymore. Or like wish I had a better car, because I've got a car that does everything I want it to and more. And it is everything I want it and more. And maybe someday, like I said, if my financial scene changes, I'll look at, something else, but for right now, I've finally found like the 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 long term car for me that I've been searching for about 7, 8 years. You
Mhm.
know, my Pantera was fine until I found out it'd been smushed and wrecked twice and repaired, and I couldn't stand to own it. And I needed to sell it because after the fires, I had nothing, and I had to sell my assets. I had to sell my airplane. I had to sell my fucking cars. The two Beamers, they were cool. I built them out. They were track day cars. They were fun. My Subaru was a monster, but had issues with the tuner, the guy, and so had to sell that because there wasn't anybody in my area that would tune it for me. They would just, it was a weird situation.
Mhm.
And then yeah, and then I got the Porsche, realized I'm in over my head with this, so I sold it, and then I found this little yellow banana, and fucking a, it's like uh, Flintstones basic when it comes to everything. And so I can work on it. I can fix it. If it breaks, I can afford it to fix it, and it'll smoke damn near most anything, even supercars on the racetrack for real. Um, and I mean, you know, so yeah, I got everything I want in the yellow car, and it's not, if it breaks, who cares? I can go down and get a fucking motor for junkyard motor for $1,500, or rebuild that one for $1,500. Fuck, it's a Honda. you know, it's a little Honda motor. It's like so. Anyways,
We got a super chat here, Mikey, for you. I'll let you read it from Jefferson Exotic.
sure. Hi, I'm Mike Snake. All I talk about is myself. I barge into the stream and never ask the panelists what's going on with them. I am a narcissist. Oh, I guess so. Yeah.
Nah, I don't think so, Mikey. Come on, man.
I don't really feel
Come
that
on, man.
way.
No,
I do talk about myself a lot, but I was asked about it. So
absolutely, absolutely. Jimmy says Tan trying to. No, I actually, Mike knows, and him and I have talked about this in person. I said, look, whenever Mike's on the panel with me, I let him speak. I let him finish his thought. Oftentimes people don't let him do that. And look, everybody's allowed to have an opinion here and join us and enjoy without having to be cut off, right? And look, Mike, I did ask you that question because with Grails, I said the same thing, Mike. I attained my Grail with my perpetual calendar. It's not my exit watch because I bought something else literally after it. For you said your
mhm.
exit watch could be your sub, and I kind of told Roy, I said a lot of people would probably say if you're looking for an exit watch, it's that. Mike, what do you think about the term one and done? Okay, Archie always
Well,
tells people about one and done. It has to be versatile, has to fit all these scenarios. Do you believe your one and done has to be used all the time, or would you be okay with just wearing it once in a while?
it just depends on how you are as a watch wearer. I mean, I get up in the morning and first thing I do is put my watch on. Right. Some people, wear their watch once a week. Right. Everybody's different. Um, so, but yeah, like with me, I'm a collector. I love watches. They're one of my passions. But with everything going on, if when I get my 41 sub, I'm probably gonna draw a line there and just have that one and done until things change drastically and I'm able to maybe go buy more. But until then, I'm probably gonna stop there because I've got other things going on and other hobbies, and you know, other things are going on. After COVID and all that other shit, I'm kind of grabbing my life back, right? And so I'm getting back into my old hobbies, and they all cost money, and so I can't just devote every penny to
Well,
buying the next Rolex.
it's interesting you say that because so Roy and I, when we were debating this topic, right? Roy had kind of, he immediately went to like complications, right? Maybe I had like led him on to that was for me, right? So,
Sure.
and I kind of said to Roy, I said, you know, I don't think that necessarily has to define an exit watch. That it's some aspirational piece that once you acquire it, like it's some really fancy thing, right? Because to me, exit watch could come from not just kind of retiring from collecting, but like you said, circumstances in life change and your priorities change. But you still want a nice watch, and you kind of pick that watch that
Hmm.
you really, really, really are going to be satisfied with. Is that kind of how you feel about the sub in this context?
Absolutely. It's like the watch I'm going to settle on. And I'm 100% happy with that, with settling on that watch until things change and I'm able to maybe move on and continue collecting. But after I get the 41 sub, I'm going to be diverting like more of my attention to my other hobbies and my other interests. Um, or not. I don't. Who knows? I'm not sure what my financial scene is going to be like in the future. But yeah, I'm going to settle on the 41 sub for a while at least.
We got a very kind super chat from Watch Nerd Nick. 990 Malaysian ringgit. Awesome conversation today. Great work, guys. Thank you so much, Nick. I was talking to same collector I spoke about earlier about kind of the topics I do on the shows I like to host and whatnot. I went through YouTube today. I looked at a bunch of creators, and a lot of it was kind of all the same. Like, let's review this new watch that came out today, or let's put together a spreadsheet or some form of a chart of watch brands and their tiers. It's all kind of the same old bullshit. And I kind of said, look, I'm trying to bring back debate on topics that really don't have, oftentimes, Nick, don't have a right answer. Yesterday we were talking about collectors and investors. I catfished Archie on because an hour earlier than he ever shows up to his actual show, because he was interested in joining the debate around, is being a collector and investor kind of mutually exclusive? There's no real right or wrong answer, Nick. Same with today, right, about the Grail watch. It's all philosophical. Mike's viewpoint is very similar to mine. Roy's diverts a little bit. But some other people, completely other side of the spectrum, that Grail watches are aspirational. You should never be able to attain them. It's the fucking boogeyman, right? It's Bigfoot. You can't.
Oh, that would haunt me.
Yeah.
That would haunt me to like my dying days. Like that's
So the
why
thing that I have an issue with that is it's just like, okay, but what if money really isn't an issue for you as an individual? Then what's your Grail watch? Are you going to have to decide on some arbitrary one of one? Like you want Eric Clapton's fucking platinum 24.99 because you can never get that, even if you don't like the 24.99. I don't know. This seems dumb to me.
No, but that's a great look. That's a great topic because, like, when you ask that question, like, money's no object, right? Like, when people always say that, you kind of, a lot of folks just beeline to like the most expensive. To me, money no object. Just, sure, it frees up a few more, pieces that I may not be able to afford, but I don't go astronomically high, Roy. In that case, and I think I've asked Mike this question in super chats over the years, and Mike has always been pretty consistent about, his overseas is his Grail, and he would buy that. But also he's always, Mike, and look, correct me if I'm wrong. I want you to chime in after me here. You've always been pretty much solid around, hey, I love my sub, I love my deep sea, I love my Rolexes, like that, right? Like, you always knew what you wanted in that sense, Mike. But what do you think, Mike, on this kind of a topic
well,
here?
that, and unlike you, I'm really not too big into complications. So um, you know, uh, but that's just a preference thing. Um, but yeah, you're correct. Like I have the watches I like, and um, if money, if like let's say all of a sudden unlimited money were to come my way, like yeah, just like you, it would open up the door for a few other watches that I would consider, but I wouldn't just like go straight for the highest, most expensive thing, you know, that I could get or anything like that. The money thing is kind of like it's not how it's expensive. It's like, can I do it or not? It's like, is it obtainable or not? And if not, then not disregard it, but don't pay it much heed because you're never going to see it in your hands, right? So, concentrate on the things that you you can possibly maybe work towards owning someday. That's
Well,
that's that's my definition of Grail.
Roy, do you think that money kind of defines um, people's collecting, right? Like, obviously, there's limitations with how much people can spend, but um,
I
if
think
you're
for
in
most people, to a large extent, that's it.
yeah, it's just it's curious because when you're looking at like I try to like Mike, I try to watch YouTube, like watch YouTube. There's a lot of different channels out there, and a lot of them are not like in our space. They're not really towards luxury watches, and I watch a lot of these shows that focus on micro brands and stuff. And what I find commonality, Mike, is the enthusiasm. Just they love a certain watch and a certain design and a certain brand and a certain history, whatever the history may be, right? Story. It's more story than history.
Oh yeah,
So
like Doxa. Like I love the story about Doxa, and then and its relation or to to the that author that writes like James Bond type novels. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Um, but he writes these books like you know James Bondy type books, and he mentions the star synchronized his Doxa watch, blah blah blah, and he writes in his books, and so there's that association, and Doxa started out as a $25 shit watch, and eventually it started the orange dial craze, and then eventually worked its way into a solid mid tier brand. From like a $50 shit, dive watch that you could buy back when they first began. And yeah, I don't know where I was getting with that,
oh,
but
look, it opens up a lot of topics, Mike. I was going to ask Roy, like, how much of the hobby do you think, as it's evolved over time, how much of the hobby is flexing? Look,
No, that
flexing
was
always exists.
about when you were saying that. That's the initial thing I wanted to. When you went down
Yeah,
that first two words, I was just going to go flex culture. It's far too much of
yeah,
it in this space, just by the nature of what the space is, and it's a play to pay thing or a pay to play thing. You have to pay a lot of money to play in this space just by the nature of the project, and then that's compounded on itself over the last 10 years.
yeah. Look, I kind of felt that way when
yeah,
I came back. So Mike obviously knows this, Mike, but Roy, you may not. Like, I took a break from Archie's channel for about almost 3 years, and that was actually during COVID. And when I came back, so the kind of community that was here prior to COVID was into a whole bunch of different types of watches, Breitlings, Omegas. Like, it was luxury. It wasn't shitters. Um,
hmm
but you wouldn't get scoffed at for looking at a JLC. Today, it's Rolex, Hype, Flex, all over YouTube. And look, like Roy, you would agree. Let me ask you: flex culture, flexing existed in the past in this hobby. It's not like I felt that way, that there was some level of flexing, but it was nowhere near what it is today, where it's kind of
No,
overpowered
I
everything.
mean, but this is what I would say is flex culture certainly existed in the hobby amongst collectors. When this got out of control in the 2000 teens through COVID is when that flex culture reached out into everywhere else, where you get, people say they walk down the street in major cities and people comment on their watch if they're wearing something that's, recognizable and hype. That was
yeah.
not the case prior to 10 years ago, and even 10 years ago probably really didn't start until 2017.
Well, flex to me was like Panerai back when in its heyday, and the big watch
But a
faves.
normie wasn't recognizing the Panerai. This is the difference. Back then, that's a watch collector thing and a watch meetup and blah blah blah. Now,
Really?
like,
Because I thought
yeah,
I thought they saw Stallone and Schwarzenegger rocking those and Hublots and the big watch things, and I thought that's what kind of like
yes and
influenced a
no.
lot of people.
It influenced a lot of people, but it was still a much smaller subsect until we got social media, until this started reaching into everybody's lives. Unless you were like plugged in to celebrity culture as well, you wouldn't know anything about that.
Yeah, true. And you look at some of the celebrities and the watches they have, and oh my God, they're like their watches someone like me could only dream of owning. But you still appreciate them for what they are. I still appreciate all these cars I'll never own for what they are. And like I just this last weekend was the vintage race weekend at Sears Point, and I went and saw like 1,000 vintage race cars that $1 million cars. And just beautiful things, and we're lucky enough that these people decide to take them out and actually still race them. And it's just so lucky that we're able to see them and appreciate them. Um, and my chance of owning any one of them is zero, right? But I still love them for what they are. What is that? That's crazy.
Yeah, let me grab this member chat for you, Mikey. We'll get into this topic. Zeppy, member for 26 months. Great to see you, Zeppy, in the chat.
Looks
Body
like an MB&F or something.
Well, it's a Christopher Ward. So bought a Christopher Ward Bel Canto, 12X compressor and Moonface. He's talking about different, I think, Christopher Ward watches. Mike, this is the Bel Canto. So yes, it does have a very MB&F aesthetic. Very,
Yeah.
very popular. A lot of folks love this watch.
Yeah. No, it's quite unique. And yeah, I like its architecture.
They got a couple different variants of it, Mike. I'll just go back one. I just picked that one. They have like a purple one. They have these bracelet ones. I'm not a big fan of the bracelet ones. This blue one's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, well, I would get the blue on the bracelet, and then I could just get the strap for $100. Oh, look at that Guilloche dial. My God, that thing is gorgeous.
He got the
Yeah.
blue one. Yeah, he got the blue one. Okay, so I have shown the red ones up here.
If I were endeavoring to get this watch, it would be this blue on a bracelet, so that I could then take the bracelet off, put it in the box, buy a strap, and wear it on a strap.
Yeah, this is dope, man. I like this one, Zeppy. This is really good. Because Mike, another topic that Roy and I talked about earlier was micro brands versus independents, and are they necessarily mutual? Like a lot of folks try to make a distinction between them. They, when you think of micro brand, you think of cheap shitter. When you think of independent, you're kind of thinking of very, very pricey on a leather dress watch on a leather strap, right? That's what at least comes to my mind. when you're thinking of micro brand and independence, Mike, what comes to your mind when you hear micro brand, and what comes to your mind when you're independent?
Man, so I'm not independent. Like I think FP Journe maybe, and some of those like names I don't know. But watches where they only make a few a year. They're handmade by one guy or whatever. Independents like that. And then the other. What was the other half of your question?
The micro brands. You hear the word
micro brands. I like micro brands. There's I've seen one that I would consider. I forget the name of it, but I saw it recently. Somebody had it. I forget the name of it, but yeah, up and comer micro brands. You got Ball, you got
Studio Underdog. You got there's a lot of brands out there. Laurier, that's a small micro brand. There's a lot of them, Mike.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe you might have to be like a micro brand kind of person. You like gravitate towards that type of like you know being a little bit different and being outside of the box and you can and it's affordable, so micro brands are cool like that sometimes.
Well, we always try to make it such a like what you just described and what I described, Mike. It's such a wide distinction between the two, right? FP Journe collector versus a William Wood collector, call it, right? But Brand, you may not even ever heard of, Mike. So
Yeah.
it's funny how it's such a wide distinction. However, I kind of talked to Roy about like it's also they're also a lot more similar than we think that they are, right? Because all of them are generally small businesses. Very, very, not a lot of staff. Just a creator or a founder had an idea or wanted to go down a path, right, and create it, whether in the high end or in the low end. Um, they're all small businesses. A lot of them have low production, whether that's, like you said, FP Journe, all the way down to a micro brand that could be producing a couple, maybe 100 watches, a couple dozen watches. They all are kind of low production. And I think lastly, Mike, the point I said to Roy was they both cater to enthusiasts, both sides of the spectrum. They don't cater to the mainstream. You don't see mainstream people walking off the street trying to buy a Philippe Dufour.
Yeah.
And just
Which
but just to say, Mike, let me finish here. Just to say,
sure.
you don't find off the street people buying a micro brand, right? It's enthusiasts that buy them. Like I'm trying to tell people that they're not that different. When you really kind of dig deep into the topic, right? What do you think, Mike? Sorry about that.
Oh no. When I think micro brand, I think and what I see, come up ads for them coming up and stuff. A lot of them are quartz, and they're really aiming at a different um, uh, customer base, and so there's that subset, and then there's the micro brand that is mid-priced mechanical, using some maybe a Siegel movement or something, but they're still mechanical, and those there's that subset. Watches, that's what's so great about watches, man. There's just so many levels and versions of way doing things, and
Do you truly
so
believe that, though, Mike? Do you truly believe that there's levels of collecting, or do you think it's just tastes, different tastes?
hmm, well, I think there's different levels of collecting um, that primarily have to do with income level. Um,
That's it, Roy. That's a good one right there. Income level of collecting. I would agree with that.
I mean, I hate making this distinction because how many people that are ultra wealthy will collect steel Rolex and then never touch anything else?
I think a lot of people.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think in
I'll
those.
be right back. 5 seconds.
Yeah, no problem, Mike. I think in a lot of
I get what
wealthy,
you're getting at, though. I get what
they'll
you're
have
getting
them
at.
there. They'll have them there.
Yeah.
Is that all they're collecting? No, but they'll have them there.
I
Um,
mean, does what about? I mean, I don't know, where Aussie expat sits, but he seems like he does quite well for himself. Does he
mhm.
like anything other than steel Rolex?
Well, I think he's just a Rolex collector, right? Like that's why I said that collecting watches. If you're just collecting the hype stuff, you are missing like you're like in the Stone Age. You don't even know the universe exists. And how much are you really missing out on? Because you can just be a Rolex collector. You can not only just be a Rolex collector, you could be a Submariner collector. There's people that they just collect Submariners, and
100%.
you and I've talked about how all the variations was what made Rolex a fun brand back in the day. Um, it's just so I think he's a Rolex collector. I don't think that
Yeah, but
he doesn't
my
have the
point
money to buy everything.
remains is you get what I'm saying though. There can be people that have tons and tons of money and can afford to buy whatever they want, but they choose to play in this pool around this price point, and that's what they're interested in.
Yeah, I just when it comes to independence, man, it's those that I see, in that are really seeking independence. Like some of them really are watch aficionados and they truly understand what they're buying and all other stuff. a lot of other folks are speculators. They're looking for the next big thing. And Roy, I want to ask you, like, how saturated do you think we are already in the independent space, and with that saturation, like, are you worried, or would you be worried if you owned one of those on long term value?
Um, I guess if I was somebody who was particularly concerned with value, yeah, if I wasn't collecting but a few brands out there, like, I think that with how mainstream Jordan has gone, I think that that'll always have a market, and the value, relatively speaking, will be there at least in the foreseeable future.
Hmm.
I think if you're collecting things associated with a particular watchmaker that are super, super low production, like you have a Simplicity, I think the value will always be there. If you start reaching out into other places, and then stuff that I think is dumb, like these Gerald Charles watches and stuff like that, I don't know. I would be called that a write off. If you love it, buy it, but never expect to get anything out of it.
Mike, what I like about these shows where we can just kind of, dive deep in some of these kind of topics that are a little bit philosophical when it comes to watch collecting, was you learn something. And I actually, I was saying, and I have been saying, that there are no levels in watch collecting. It's different tastes, or different interests, I guess you could say. But when you said there are different income levels of collecting, that actually does make sense.
Oh yeah,
And,
because
and I Go ahead.
you bump up an income level, it just opens a whole bunch of doors to a whole different new subset of watches.
It's a fair point because I know folks that collect micro brands that would love to collect Rolex. They just can't. So then they divert their attention to what they can afford.
Hmm.
And like I said, when I'm looking at independent collectors and I'm looking at micro brand collectors, that same enthusiasm is there. Between the two type of collectors, they're not that different, because they are looking for something unique. They're not just walking off the street. It's not for the mainstream. You have to know it, basically. And we make in our minds, Mike, like I was saying, the watch collecting is such a vast spectrum that we try to rationalize it by putting things into simple buckets that are
Hmm.
clearly just broad strokes, completely inaccurate. Let's use the term dress watch, right? Like, any watch on a leather strap is dress watch, and that's not fucking true. Like, it's not true at all that you put a watch on a leather strap, it's a dress watch. You can
Sure,
put anything. You can put a fucking Submariner on a leather strap if you want to. It doesn't make it a
sure.
dress watch. Um, so we try to simplify stuff like that, and I think that when we're thinking independence and micro brands, Mike, it's such an astronomical difference between the how we perceive them when you kind of look at the two situations, the two groups together. But I'm just saying they're not that different than we're trying to perceive them to be.
Oh yeah. Well, when I first got into watches, like I was doing really good, and I decided I'm going to get me the best I can get. I'm going to get a Rolex because I knew shit about watches, and I just knew that Rolex at that time, Rolex was the best supposedly, and I found out real quick when I started taking a high interest in watches that Rolex there's so many thousands of other brands than just Rolex. It was a rabbit hole, a really deep rabbit hole, and yeah, it blew my mind. As far as just the variety and the depth of the hobby. And there's so many different aspects of what you can appreciate about watches. You can put them in subsets if you want, or you can just kind of like what you like and buy what you like. It's unlimited. There are no rules, right?
This is an interesting point, by Green Man, and I don't think he's wrong. Um, I'm not sure if it's the person's income. It took me a long time to talk myself into dropping 10K on something I don't need. I always had the money. Yeah, I think that, Mike, there are going to be folks that, yeah, are like Green Man, that just, it's a lot of money. 10 grand's a lot of money, to anybody, right? Like, it's not a small sum of money. And people, there are folks that could be ultra wealthy that really do care about 10 grand.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, in some people's case, 10 or 30 grand would be that would be their their net worth. You know,
Mhm.
and that's what I meant by, like, income being opening doors. Because, like, if you're a multi-billionaire, and you get into watches, you know, you might go on a buying spree, or you might get really into it and find favorites. You might find your favorite brand. Like I said, there's no real rules, but income level does definitely limit what you can
Yeah,
get
my
your hands on.
I would say I agree with you completely there. I guess, when I was saying that I don't think income level has anything to do with quote levels to collecting, it certainly means that if you're at a lower income level versus a higher income level, it definitely opens up more watches and more brands. But I don't know. I don't know if I define levels just purely based on price point.
No, me either. And honestly, my love of watches doesn't have much to do with the price point. I love the watches that I love. And you know, yeah. Uh,
So,
I know there's a lot of watches I can't afford. I know there's a few I can, and there's a few I can, hope to attain someday. But that's about as simple as it gets for me.
yeah, but Mike, there's probably watches that you can't afford that you absolutely don't give a shit about, and there's watches that you
Oh,
can
totally.
afford. There's watches that you can afford that you absolutely don't give a shit about, right? So,
Yeah,
it's a lot of it is your personal taste, what really appeals to you. I think, like, this is a good one.
totally.
I want to bring up this chat from Stifel. He's an OG of the channel, Mike. He's from way back in the day. He's gone through his own journey of, being a Rolex guy to being a Grand Seiko guy for a long time. He was fucking drinking the Grand Seiko Kool-Aid. This guy, he was wearing fucking three-piece suits to like Grand Seiko AD events and shit. Like, then he found the way. He came back to his Pontiff, Mike. He came back to his Pontiff and bought a couple of Patek Philippe's. So I'm gonna read this out. Der Stiefel. I spent way more than I should have on watches with my income level, and I've trapped myself with where I can go in the hobby unless I super consolidate. Me and Roy talked about that earlier, consolidating, or try to enjoy less expensive pieces.
Yeah, no, I'm right with you there. I super consolidated and bought my Porsche. you know, but that could have very well, been a watch of the same value. Um, that's what I meant by, like income levels, like kind of limiting or dictating, you know, what you're able to strive for, or as far as ownership goes.
But
As
Mike,
far as far as appreciation,
mhm.
you know totally, you can appreciate anything of any price.
For you, is there kind of a natural ceiling when it comes to price? So let me just ask this question hypothetically, right? Like, you have all the money in the world. You are the richest man in the world. Um, is there kind of just that, like, are you going to be seeking like the absolute highest, or is there kind of that limit where you're just like, you know what? For me, I'm going to buy a watch at this price. That's pretty much it. I don't need more than that, even if I have all the money in the world.
I've seen some watches that really, like, are like insanely expensive, but are also like insanely, like, if I had the money, yeah, and that amount of money wouldn't alter my lifestyle. Like, I wouldn't have to eat top ramen for the next 10 years to go own it. I've seen watches that I would, totally love. If I had all the money in the world, I'd probably be very into the really high end, super esoteric stuff, as well as having a basic, Rolex to Patek, Rolex to Vacheron level of collecting, in that range. And then, you know, having all the money in the world, of course, I'm probably going to be into some of the customs or bespoke or one of ones, or there's, like I said, there's just so many levels of this rabbit hole is so deep, but yeah,
Yeah, for
I
me,
don't.
Mike, I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say like I was gonna say like I would probably I don't think I would go astronomically high, but unless I was looking for something very, very rare, like some antique, vintage, Patek Philippe that had some kind of historical significance. Like outside of that, for me, I think that I would be happy with certain pieces. They are expensive, like a handmade piece, like a Kerry Voodoo. I got some Kerry Voutilainen's. I really like his stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
It can be funky. It can be super traditional.
I know I'd go straight for a birth year Submariner, and they're not cheap.
But I also don't think I need it. I need to get something super crazy. Yeah, Roy, what do you think?
I was just going to say that, I was trying to think about this as you guys were having that conversation. Like, okay, is there anything that I would want to buy, that I completely would have written off, me ever buying simply because of the price? And, I don't think the answer to that is yes. And I'm certainly not talking like the most expensive watches I would ever consider buying are actually exactly what you were, showing earlier. It would be a 5270, except for I'd want the 5270 with the salmon dial.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but I was just trying to think, like, if it was an option, would I really want like a Grubel 4C, or would I want a handmade one from them? Like, I don't know. But if I saw it in person and I was completely wowed by it, money's no object. Well,
Roy's just gonna spend that dough, guys. we do have a member chat here from Madman, officially member for 48 months. That's 4 years now, Mike. The Undertaker says many people get buried wearing a brigade, and no one even bothers to steal them off the corpses. Is that because they're unsellable? Would never happen with a Rolex, Fikers. People eat ramen to buy Rolex. For Madman, we're gonna play a Rolex quick clip for you guys.
Buy the fucking Rolex. Buy the fucking Rolex. Get a bloody Rolex. Rolex. I mean, seriously, you've got to buy the fucking Rolex. Rolex. Buy the fucking Rolex. Rolex. Rolex.
Rolex, guys. I'm rounding off 3 hours here, guys. I gotta go grab some dinner. Eddie is live on the dungeon, so I'm gonna be transferring. We got 83 people here. Transfer you guys over to Eddie. Final words from Mike the Snake. Final words from Roy. Grail watches, exit watches. What do you guys think? Give us some final words.
Roy, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, to me, they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. They're two different things, and I mean, that's about it. Yeah, I don't know what other to say than that. In a short period of time, they're two different concepts to me.
I haven't put much thought into either of them really, other than the one, my Grail watch that I hope to get someday. That's just about it. That's it.
I was gonna say, Mike, I'll make it super simple for you. Easy answer to exiting Grail watches. Buy the fucking Rolex. That's all you got to say, guys.
Yep.
I want to thank everybody for joining us in the chat. I'm gonna send you guys over to Eddie. Definitely join him on the panel, guys. Don't leave Eddie alone. Let's talk to Eddie on the panel, guys, on the dungeon. I've done 3 hours. I'm tired. I'll see you guys next time. Thank you, Roy. Thank you, Mike.
Right on, Tan. It's always a pleasure talking to you, man.
Oh, Mikey, always a pleasure having you.
You as well, Roy.
All right.
All right, guys. Dungeon time.
I like learning.